The slap echoed across the ranch yard like a gunshot. Every man froze. Evelyn Harper stood there, hand still raised, facing down a cowboy twice her size, while the owner watched from the shadows. She'd just crossed a line no woman in Red Hollow had ever dared to cross, and everyone knew there was no coming back from it. But what brought a desperate girl from a failing home to this moment of reckoning? Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The morning Evelyn's life changed forever started with her brother's fist slamming onto the kitchen table hard enough to rattle the empty tin cups. "You're going!" Evelyn didn't look up from the pathetic excuse for breakfast she was scraping together. 2 eggs between 3 people, watered-down coffee that tasted like dirt, and half a loaf of bread so stale she'd had to soak it just to make it chewable. Her hands kept moving, mechanical, practiced. She'd gotten good at pretending she didn't hear Thomas when he got like this. "Did you hear me, Evie? I said you're going. I heard you the first time." Her voice came out flat, tired. She was always tired these days. "And I already told you no." Thomas moved fast for a man who'd been drinking since dawn. He grabbed her wrist hard enough that the knife clattered against the cast iron pan. "We don't have the luxury of no anymore. Look around you. Look at this place." She didn't need to look. She'd been looking at it every day for the past year, watching their father's legacy crumble one piece at a time. The Harper family homestead, if you could even call it that anymore, consisted of a sagging 2-room cabin with a roof that leaked when it rained, a barn that housed exactly 1 aging horse, and 20 acres of land so depleted that nothing would grow on it except weeds and regret. Their father had died owing money to half the town. Their mother had followed him 6 months later, taking what was left of Evelyn's hope with her. "I'm not going to work as a cook at some ranch." Evelyn jerked her hand free, turning to face him properly. "I don't care what it pays." "Thornridge Ranch," Thomas spoke the name like it was supposed to mean something. "Dawson Ridgewell's place. 20 miles north, biggest operation in 3 counties. They need a cook, and they're willing to pay real money, enough to cover the debts and then some." "Then you go cook for them." "Don't be stupid. They want a woman, someone who can actually make food fit to eat, not burn everything like I do." He grabbed a piece of paper from his pocket, creased and slightly damp with sweat. "Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house gave me the details. They've been through 4 cooks in 6 months. Nobody wants the job because it's too remote, too rough. But that means they're desperate enough to pay well." Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. "If nobody wants it, why would I?" "Because we're about to lose everything." Thomas's voice cracked on the last word. For just a second, she saw past the anger and the drinking to the scared younger brother she'd practically raised. "The bank's giving us until the end of the month. That's 3 weeks, Evie. 3 weeks and they take the land, the house, everything. This job is the only chance we've got." She turned back to the stove, moving the eggs around the pan even though they were already done. The silence stretched out between them, filled only with the hiss of the dying fire and the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears. "How long?" she finally asked. "What?" "How long would I have to work there?" She could hear the relief in his exhale. "Contracts for 6 months. Room and board included, plus wages. You send the money back, we pay off the debts, and maybe we can figure out how to make this place work again." Evelyn closed her eyes. 6 months. Half a year of her life, gone to some remote ranch in the middle of nowhere, cooking for rough men who probably wouldn't even appreciate it. But what choice did she have? Watch Thomas drink himself to death while they lost everything their parents had worked for? End up on the street with nothing? "When do they want me?" "Monday. Day after tomorrow." "Of course. No time to think, no time to prepare, just pack up and go." "Fine." The word tasted like ash. "But I want it in writing. Every penny of what I earn goes to the debts first. And if anything happens to me out there, nothing's going to happen to you. It's just cooking." She finally turned to look at him, really look at him. Thomas was 23, 2 years younger than her, but he looked 40. His hands shook from too much whiskey and not enough food. His eyes were bloodshot, his face gaunt. When had he gotten so old? "You need to stop drinking," she said quietly. "I'll stop when we're not about to lose everything." "You'll be dead before then." He flinched like she'd hit him, but didn't argue. They both knew she was right. "Ugh, Red Hollow on a Saturday afternoon was a study in judgment disguised as civilization. Evelyn walked down the main street with her head up and her eyes forward, very aware of the whispers that followed her like flies on meat. That's the Harper girl. Heard her brothers sending her away to work. Probably for the best, nothing left for her here anyway. She'd lived in this town her entire life. She'd gone to the schoolhouse with most of these people's children, had helped their mothers during harvest season, had brought food to their families when someone was sick. None of that mattered now. Poverty was contagious in places like Red Hollow, and the Harpers had caught it bad. The general store was her first stop. She needed supplies for the trip, practical things she could afford with the few coins she had left. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, and Mrs. Brennan behind the counter looked up with an expression that could have curdled milk. "Miss Harper." "Mrs. Brennan." Evelyn kept her voice polite, neutral. "I need to buy some things. I heard you're leaving town." The older woman's tone made it clear what she thought of that. "Going to work at Thornridge Ranch." News traveled fast. "That's right. You know what kind of place that is? What kind of men work there?" Evelyn felt her jaw tighten. "I imagine they're the kind who need to eat, same as everyone else. It's not proper for a young woman to be out there alone with all those ranch hands. People will talk. People are already talking." Evelyn picked up a small bundle of fabric that might work for spare clothes. "At least this way I'll give them something real to talk about." Mrs. Brennan's face pinched into something sour. "Your mother would be ashamed." The words hit harder than they should have. Evelyn set down the fabric carefully, taking a slow breath before she responded. "My mother would understand doing what needs to be done to survive. Now, do you want my money, or should I take it elsewhere?" They completed the transaction in hostile silence. Evelyn left with a small bundle of necessities and the absolute certainty that by nightfall, the entire town would know every detail of their conversation, probably with embellishments. Her next stop was the boarding house where Mrs. Patterson lived. The older woman had been kind to Evelyn's mother, one of the few in town who hadn't turned her back when things got bad. If anyone could tell her the truth about what she was walking into, it would be her. Mrs. Patterson answered the door herself, her weathered face creasing into something almost like sympathy when she saw who it was. "Evelyn, come in, child. I've been expecting you." The boarding house parlor was small but clean, smelling faintly of lavender and old wood. Mrs. Patterson gestured to a worn armchair and disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with 2 cups of actual coffee. The real kind, not the chicory substitute most people had been drinking since the war. "I suppose Thomas told you about the position?" Mrs. Patterson said, settling into her own chair with a slight wince. Her knees weren't what they used to be. "He told me they need a cook, that they pay well. That's about all I know." "Then let me fill in the rest." The old woman took a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "Dawson Ridgewell owns Thornridge Ranch, biggest cattle operation between here and the territorial line. He runs a tight ship, fair but hard. The men who work for him are rough, but they're not criminals. Mostly just cowboys trying to make a living." "Why can't they keep a cook?" "Because it's thankless work in the middle of nowhere. The ranch is 20 miles from town, accessible by one road that's barely passable half the year. The bunkhouse kitchen is old, the equipment's outdated, and you'd be cooking for anywhere from 15 to 25 men, depending on the season. Plus, there's the main house." Evelyn felt her stomach drop. "The main house?" "Ridgewell has a daughter, Lily. She's about 8 years old, I think. Her mother died in childbirth, or maybe it was fever. The stories vary. Ridgewell's housekeeper handles most of the cooking there, but she's getting on in years and could use help." "So I'd be cooking for the ranch hands and helping in the main house?" "That's the general idea, yes. Though I'll warn you, Ridgewell himself is not an easy man to work for. He expects perfection and doesn't tolerate excuses. But if you can meet his standards, he'll pay you fair and treat you square." Evelyn turned the coffee cup in her hands, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. "Why are you helping me? Why did you bring this to Thomas?" Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "Because I knew your mother, and I know you. You're a hard worker, Evelyn, and you deserve a chance at something better than watching your brother drink away what's left of your family's name. This job won't be easy, but it's honest work with honest pay. That's more than most folks get these days." "What about the other cooks? The ones who didn't last?" First one couldn't handle the isolation. Second one got into it with the foreman and left in a huff. Third one was a drunk. Ridgewell sent him packing after a week. Fourth one was a good cook but couldn't manage the volume. It's hard work, no denying that. Evelyn set down her cup. What if I can't do it either? Then you come back and we figure something else out. But you won't know unless you try. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward, her eyes sharp and knowing. Besides, what's your alternative? Stay here and watch everything fall apart? At least out there, you'll have a purpose. Torch. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Evelyn packed her few belongings into a canvas bag her father had used for traveling. 2 practical dresses, a spare apron, her mother's old recipe book, and the knife set that was probably the most valuable thing she owned. Everything else she left for Thomas, though what good any of it would do him, she couldn't say. Sunday evening, she found him in the barn, supposedly checking on the horse, but really just hiding with a bottle. I'm leaving at first light, she said from the doorway. Thomas looked up, and for a moment she saw something like regret cross his face. I know. The money I send back goes straight to the bank. Not the saloon, not anywhere else. The bank? I know. And you need to find work, real work, not just odd jobs that barely pay for your next drink. Evie, I mean it, Thomas. She stepped into the barn, and the old boards creaked under her feet. I'm doing this for both of us. Don't make it for nothing. He stood up, swaying slightly, and for a terrifying moment she thought he might cry. But Thomas Harper hadn't cried since their mother died, and he wasn't about to start now. I'll make it right, he said. I promise. Evelyn wanted to believe him. She really did. But promises were easy, and follow-through was hard, and Thomas had never been good at hard things. Goodbye, Thomas. It's not goodbye. You'll be back in 6 months. She didn't answer. They both knew 6 months was a lifetime when you had nothing to hold on to. The morning she left, Red Hollow was still sleeping off Saturday night's excesses. Evelyn walked to the edge of town where the weekly supply wagon made its run to the northern ranches. The driver was a grizzled old man named Coop, who'd been making this route since before she was born. You the new cook for Thornridge? He asked, looking her up and down with the kind of assessment that came from years of reading people. That's right. Huh, you don't look like much. I can cook? Better hope so. Ridgewell don't suffer fools. He gestured to the back of the wagon. Climb on up. It's a 4-hour ride and we're already behind schedule. The journey north took them through terrain that got progressively rougher and more remote. The road, and Evelyn used that term generously, was little more than 2 ruts carved through scrubland and rock. They passed a few scattered homesteads in the first hour, then nothing but open country stretching out in all directions. Coop wasn't much for conversation, which suited Evelyn fine. She spent the time watching the landscape change, memorizing landmarks for a journey she might someday have to make on foot if things went wrong. The morning sun was harsh and unforgiving, baking the earth and making mirages dance on the horizon. Around mid-morning, Coop finally broke the silence. You ever worked on a ranch before? No. Ever cooked for more than a handful of people? My father used to run a boarding house before things went bad. This ain't a boarding house. These are working men who've been out in the sun all day doing hard labor. They'll eat anything you put in front of them, but they'll also know if you're phoning it in. Evelyn turned to look at him. I don't know what that means. It means don't think you can just throw some beans in a pot and call it supper. These boys need real food, and lots of it. You short them or serve them garbage, they'll make your life hell. I can handle myself, Coop snorted. Yeah, that's what the last one said. She lasted 3 days before she had a crying fit and demanded to be taken back to town. I won't cry. We'll see. Another hour passed. The sun climbed higher, and Evelyn began to understand what isolation really meant. Out here, there was nothing between her and the horizon. No neighbors, no town, no easy escape if things went wrong. Just endless open country and the gradually rising foothills in the distance. Finally, Coop pointed ahead. There. That's Thornridge. At first, Evelyn couldn't see anything but more scrubland. Then the road crested a low rise, and suddenly it was all laid out before her. Thornridge Ranch sprawled across a valley like something out of a different world. The main house sat on a slight elevation, a two-story structure with a wide porch and actual glass windows that glinted in the sunlight. Below it, arranged in a rough semicircle, were the working buildings, a massive barn, several corrals, a blacksmith's forge, storage sheds, and what had to be the bunkhouse. Beyond all of it, she could see cattle dotting the hillsides, more cattle than she'd ever seen in one place. Big operation, Coop said, something like pride in his voice. Ridgewell built this from nothing. Came out here 15 years ago with a wagon, a pregnant wife, and more ambition than sense. Now look at it. The wagon rumbled down the slope toward the ranch buildings. As they got closer, Evelyn could see men working, mending fences, moving cattle, shoeing horses. They all looked up as the wagon passed, and she felt the weight of their stares like physical things. Coop pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a long, low building that had to be the bunkhouse. "Wait here. I'll fetch someone to show you around." He disappeared inside, leaving Evelyn sitting in the wagon bed surrounded by supply crates and her single pathetic bag of belongings. She could feel eyes on her from every direction, ranch hands pausing in their work to get a look at the new cook. A young cowboy, maybe 18, approached the wagon with a cocky grin. "Well now, looks like our luck's finally turning. You're a hell of a lot prettier than old Cookie was." "Cookie?" "Last cook. Mean old bastard who couldn't boil water without burning it." The kid leaned against the wagon wheel. "Name's Billy. Billy Carson. Welcome to Thornridge. Evelyn Harper." "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Harper. Fair warning. The kitchen's a disaster. Cookie left in kind of a hurry after the foreman threatened to strangle him with his own apron strings." Before Evelyn could respond, a sharp voice cut across the yard. "Carson, those horses won't shoe themselves." Billy straightened up fast, the grin disappearing. "Yes, sir, Mr. Holloway." He hurried off, and Evelyn looked toward the source of the voice. A tall, lean man in his 40s was walking toward the wagon, his face weathered by sun and wind into something hard and unyielding. This had to be the foreman. "Miss Harper?" It wasn't a question. "I'm Jack Holloway, foreman of this ranch. Mr. Ridgewell's up at the main house, but he'll want to meet you before you settle in." "All right." Holloway's eyes narrowed slightly, like he was trying to figure her out. "You know what you signed on for here?" "I'm the cook. I cook." "You're the cook if Mr. Ridgewell says you are. He's particular about who works for him." He gestured toward the main house. "Come on, bring your things." Evelyn grabbed her bag and climbed down from the wagon, trying not to show how nervous she suddenly was. The walk to the main house felt like a mile, though it couldn't have been more than 100 yards. She was acutely aware of every man on the ranch watching her, measuring her, probably betting on how long she'd last. The main house up close was even more impressive than it had looked from a distance. Someone had put real care into building it, solid timber construction, a shingled roof in good repair, and that wide porch with actual furniture on it. Wind chimes hung from one corner, making soft music in the breeze. Holloway led her up the porch steps and knocked twice on the door before opening it. "Mr. Ridgewell, the new cook's here." The interior of the house was cool and dim after the bright sunlight. Evelyn's eyes took a moment to adjust, and when they did, she found herself in a front room that was surprisingly well kept. Furniture that matched, rugs on the floor, curtains on the windows. A woman's touch, even if the woman was long gone. "Bring her in." The voice came from deeper in the house. Holloway led her through to what looked like an office. Walls lined with ledgers and ranch records, a large desk covered in papers and maps, and behind that desk, a man who could only be Dawson Ridgewell. He was younger than Evelyn had expected, maybe 35, with dark hair starting to go gray at the temples and eyes that looked like they'd seen more than their share of hard times. He was clean-shaven, dressed in simple work clothes, and when he looked up at her, his expression gave away absolutely nothing. "This is Evelyn Harper," Holloway said, "from Red Hollow." Ridgewell stood, and Evelyn realized he was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from actual hard work, rather than just sitting behind a desk. He came around and leaned against the front of the desk, arms crossed, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "You're the cook," he finally said. "Yes, sir." "You know how to cook for 20 men?" "I've cooked for crowds before." "Define crowds." Evelyn lifted her chin. "My father ran a boarding house. We had up to 15 people staying at any given time, plus day workers. I've been cooking since I was 12. "That was a while ago." She felt her face heat. "I'm 25. I know. I asked around about you before I agreed to hire you. Ridgewell pushed off the desk and walked to the window, looking out over his ranch. Your father died owing money. Your brother's a drunk. Your family's about to lose everything. That about sum it up? The casual way he laid out her life's disasters stung more than it should have. That sums it up. So you're desperate. I prefer motivated. He turned back to face her, and she thought she saw the ghost of something like amusement in his eyes. Fair enough. Here's how this works. You've got a trial period of 1 week. You'll cook 3 meals a day for the ranch hands in the bunkhouse kitchen. Breakfast at 5:30, lunch at noon, dinner at 6:30. The men work hard and they eat accordingly. You run out of food, you fail. You serve them inedible garbage, you fail. You cause trouble or can't handle the work, you fail. And if I don't fail, then you've got a job for 6 months at $40 a month plus room and board. You'll also help my housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, with meals for the main house when needed. My daughter eats with me in the evenings. $40 a month was more money than Evelyn had seen in a year. She tried not to let her relief show. That's acceptable. One more thing, Ridgewell's voice dropped, getting harder. I don't tolerate any nonsense between my workers. No romantic entanglements, no drama, no games. You're here to cook, not to socialize. Any man who bothers you, you tell Holloway or you tell me. We'll handle it, but if you're encouraging it or playing games, you're gone. Clear? Evelyn felt her temper spark. Perfectly clear. And while we're laying down rules, I don't tolerate being grabbed, harassed, or treated like I'm less than human just because I'm a woman. Any man who tries it will regret it. Ridgewell's eyebrows went up slightly. You planning to fight my ranch hands? If I have to. For a long moment he just looked at her. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. A small thing, but genuine. You might actually last more than 3 days. Holloway, show Miss Harper to her quarters and the kitchen. She starts tomorrow morning. Yes, sir. Holloway gestured for Evelyn to follow him. She turned to go, then paused. Mr. Ridgewell, thank you for the opportunity. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen the kitchen. Might. Holloway wasn't kidding. The bunkhouse kitchen was a disaster. It occupied one end of the long building that housed the ranch hands, separated from the sleeping quarters by a wall that looked like it might fall over if someone leaned on it too hard. The room itself was maybe 20 by 15 feet, with a massive cast-iron stove that had seen better days, a scarred wooden prep table, and shelves that held a chaotic jumble of pots, pans, and supplies. Everything was coated in a layer of grease and grime that spoke of months, maybe years, of neglect. The floor was sticky under her boots. The windows were so dirty they barely let in light. And the smell. Evelyn tried not to breathe too deeply. Like I said, Holloway offered, Cookie wasn't much for cleaning. Cookie wasn't much for anything, apparently. Evelyn set down her bag and walked slowly through the space, cataloging the disaster. When's the last time anyone properly scrubbed this place? Define properly. Never mind. She turned to face him. I'll need supplies. Soap, scrub brushes, fresh water, and about a gallon of elbow grease. You're going to clean before you cook? I'm not cooking in this. I'd poison everyone. She pulled off her traveling shawl and rolled up her sleeves. Is there somewhere I can sleep? Holloway led her to a small room off the kitchen, barely bigger than a closet, with a narrow bed, a trunk, and a single window. It was clean at least, and private. Mrs. Chen insisted we fix this up for you, Holloway said. She said no woman should have to sleep in the bunkhouse with the men. Tell her thank you. You can tell her yourself. She wants to meet you after dinner. He paused at the door. Look, Miss Harper, I'm going to be straight with you. Most of the men are decent, but they're going to test you. They'll complain about the food, make crude jokes, try to get a rise out of you. It's what they do with every new cook. And what should I do about it? Don't take the bait. Do your job, keep your head down, and eventually they'll accept you. Or they won't. Either way, don't let them see you rattle. After he left, Evelyn stood in the middle of her new room and let herself feel the full weight of what she'd just taken on. She was 20 miles from anything resembling civilization, surrounded by strange men, responsible for feeding an entire ranch workforce with equipment that looked like it might give her tetanus. But she'd promised Thomas she'd make this work. More than that, she'd promised herself. So she changed into her oldest dress, tied on her apron, and went to war with the kitchen. By midnight, Evelyn had made a dent in the disaster. The stove was scrubbed within an inch of its life, the prep table was clean enough to actually use, and she'd organized the pantry supplies into something resembling a system. Her hands were raw from lye soap, and her back ached from hours of bending and scrubbing, but the kitchen was starting to look like a place where food could actually be safely prepared. She'd also taken inventory of what she had to work with. The pantry was well stocked with basics: flour, cornmeal, beans, salt pork, coffee, sugar, dried fruit, and spices. The cold cellar held potatoes, onions, and some sad-looking carrots. There was a smokehouse with bacon and ham, and Holloway had mentioned fresh beef was delivered twice a week. It wasn't fancy, but it was enough to work with. Around 1 in the morning, she finally admitted defeat and went to bed. Her little room was stuffy, and the bed was harder than she was used to, but exhaustion won out over discomfort. She fell asleep planning breakfast menus and dreaming of her mother's recipe book. She woke to someone pounding on her door. "Cook, you up? It's almost 5. Evelyn jerked upright, disoriented and panicking. 5 o'clock. Breakfast at 5:30. She'd overslept. She dressed in record time, splashed water on her face from the basin, and burst into the kitchen to find it wasn't empty. A woman in her 60s stood by the stove, already starting a fire. "You must be Evelyn," the woman said in accented English. "I'm Mrs. Chen. I thought you might need help this first morning." "I overslept. I'm so sorry. I should have—" "You worked until midnight cleaning this disaster. I saw the light under the door." Mrs. Chen's expression was kind but firm. "Don't apologize. Just start cooking. The men will be here in 25 minutes, and they're expecting food." 25 minutes. Evelyn's brain kicked into emergency mode. "Right, okay, I can do this." She grabbed her mother's recipe book and flipped to breakfast. "Biscuits? No time for biscuits. Flapjacks. I can do flapjacks fast. And bacon, and eggs, and coffee." "The coffee's already started." Mrs. Chen pointed to the massive pot already heating on the stove. "You make the batter, I'll start the bacon." They worked in synchronized chaos. Evelyn mixed flour, buttermilk, eggs, and leavening into a batter, while Mrs. Chen laid out bacon in several large skillets. The kitchen filled with smoke and sizzling sounds and the smell of cooking meat. Evelyn heated her griddle and started pouring out flapjacks, working as fast as she'd ever worked in her life. Flip stack, don't burn them, keep moving, don't think about the time. At exactly 5:30, the door burst open and men started filing in. They were loud, rough, still half asleep, and they descended on the food like locusts. Evelyn kept cooking, trying not to look at them, focusing entirely on keeping the flapjacks coming. "More bacon! Coffee's out." "These flapjacks are actually edible, damn." Mrs. Chen moved through the chaos like she'd done this 1,000 times before, refilling coffee, bringing out more bacon, managing the crowd. Evelyn just kept cooking, her arms aching, sweat dripping down her back despite the early morning cool. Finally, mercifully, the rush ended. The men filtered back out to start their workday, and Evelyn sagged against the prep table, exhausted. "You did well," Mrs. Chen said, already starting to clean up. "For your first day." "I barely survived." "That's what first days are for, surviving." The older woman smiled. "Tomorrow you'll have more time to prepare. And the day after that, it will be easier still." "Thank you for helping me. I would have failed without you." "Perhaps, but you didn't fail, so it doesn't matter." Mrs. Chen wiped her hands on her apron. "Come to the main house tonight after dinner service. Mr. Ridgewell wants you to meet Lily, and I want to show you how the household kitchen works." "All right." After Mrs. Chen left, Evelyn collapsed into a chair and looked at the wreckage of her first breakfast service. Dirty pans everywhere, batter splattered on the walls, and she still had to prepare lunch in 6 hours. But she'd done it. She'd fed 20 men, and none of them had died or complained too loudly. It was a start. The days blurred together into a rhythm of brutal, exhausting work. Evelyn woke before dawn, cooked breakfast for the crew, cleaned up, started preparing lunch, cooked lunch, cleaned up again, started preparing dinner, cooked dinner, cleaned up one final time, and fell into bed barely able to move. The men tested her exactly like Holloway said they would. They complained the coffee was too weak, then too strong. They said the beans needed more salt, then too much salt. They made jokes she didn't understand and laughed when she didn't react. But the food was good. Even the complaints were half-hearted because everyone could tell the difference between her cooking and whatever Cookie had been serving them. On her third day, a young ranch hand named Tommy asked if she could make the kind of cornbread his mother used to make. "What kind was that?" Evelyn asked, up to her elbows in bread dough. "Sweet. She put honey in it." "I can try." That night she served honey cornbread with the dinner stew. Tommy took one bite and his eyes actually got wet. "That's exactly like Ma's," he said quietly. "Thank you, Miss Harper." After that, something shifted. The men started saying please and thank you. They cleaned up after themselves a little better. They stopped treating her like an inconvenience and started treating her like, well, like she mattered. On Friday evening, exactly 1 week after she'd arrived, Holloway found her cleaning up after dinner. "Mr. Ridgewell wants to see you." Evelyn's heart sank. This was it. He was going to tell her she hadn't passed the trial period, that she wasn't good enough, that she needed to leave. She followed Holloway to the main house, rehearsing arguments in her head, but when she entered Ridgewell's office, he didn't look angry. He looked tired. "Miss Harper, sit down." She sat. Ridgewell leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I've been getting reports all week, from Holloway, from the men, from Mrs. Chen. I can do better. I know the first few days were rough, but I'm getting faster and—" "You passed." Evelyn stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "The trial period. You passed. The job's yours if you want it." The relief was so intense she felt dizzy. "I want it." "Good. Because the men actually seem happy for once, and Mrs. Chen says you're a hard worker." He pulled out a ledger and made a notation. "Your first month's wages will be paid at the end of next week. You can send them back to Red Hollow with Coop's supply run." "Thank you, Mr. Ridgewell." "Don't thank me. You earned it." He closed the ledger. "Now, there's one more thing. Lily's been asking to meet you. Mrs. Chen talks about you, and my daughter's curious." Evelyn's stomach clenched with a different kind of nervousness. "All right." Ridgewell stood and led her through the house to a sitting room where a little girl sat curled up in a chair with a book. She looked up when they entered, and Evelyn saw she had her father's dark hair and serious eyes. "Lily, this is Miss Harper. She's our new cook." "Hello?" Lily's voice was soft, uncertain. "Hello, Lily." Evelyn smiled, trying to look friendly and unthreatening. "Your father says you've been asking about me. Mrs. Chen says you make good cornbread." "I try. Do you like cornbread?" Lily nodded, then seemed to gather her courage. "Could you teach me how to make it? Mrs. Chen's been teaching me to cook, but she doesn't know how to make cornbread like that." Evelyn glanced at Ridgewell, who gave a small nod. "I'd be happy to teach you," Evelyn said. "Maybe tomorrow afternoon, if your father says it's all right." "Please, Papa?" "We'll see." But his tone was gentle, and Evelyn could see the love there, buried under all that hardness. As she walked back to the bunkhouse that night, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She had a job. She had a place to sleep. She had purpose. It wasn't much, but it was hers. And for now, that was enough. The Saturday afternoon sun was unforgiving as Evelyn stood in the main house kitchen with Lily Ridgewell perched on a stool beside her, watching with the kind of intense focus that only children could manage. Mrs. Chen had excused herself to tend to other household duties, leaving them alone with flour, cornmeal, and the promise of something sweet. "First thing you need to know about cornbread," Evelyn said, measuring out the cornmeal into a large bowl, "is that it's simple. The trick isn't in making it complicated, it's in knowing when to stop." "Stop what?" Lily asked, her small hands folded in her lap like she was afraid to touch anything. "Stop fussing with it. Some things get better the more you work them. Bread dough, for example. But cornbread batter? You mix it just enough and then you leave it alone." Evelyn glanced at the girl. "You want to help or just watch?" Lily's eyes went wide. "I can help." "That's why you're here, isn't it? Come on, wash your hands and grab that measuring cup." They worked together in a silence that was surprisingly comfortable. Lily followed instructions with careful precision, measuring flour and baking powder like each scoop mattered. When it came time to crack the eggs, she hesitated. "What if I get shells in it?" "Then we fish them out. It's not the end of the world." Evelyn handed her an egg. "Go on." The girl cracked it with more force than necessary, sending shell fragments into the bowl along with the egg. Her face fell immediately. I ruined it. No, you didn't. Watch. Evelyn used half an eggshell to scoop out the fragments, a trick her mother had taught her years ago. See? Easy fix. Try the next one. Lily's second attempt was better. By the third egg, she was almost confident. My mama used to cook, Lily said quietly, not looking up from the bowl, before she died. Evelyn's hand stilled on the measuring cup. This was dangerous territory, the kind of conversation that could go wrong fast. But the girl was looking at her now with eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. I bet she was good at it, Evelyn said carefully. I don't remember. I was really little. Lily traced a finger through the spilled flour on the counter. Papa doesn't talk about her much. Neither does Mrs. Chen. I think it makes them sad. Sometimes people don't talk about things that hurt. Do you have a mama? I did. She died last year. Lily looked up sharply. Does it get easier? The question hit harder than Evelyn expected. She stopped pretending to measure ingredients and turned to face the girl properly. I don't know yet. Some days are worse than others, but I think she'd want me to keep going, to do things that matter. Like cooking? Like cooking. They finished the batter in silence, and Evelyn poured it into a greased pan before sliding it into the oven. The heat from the stove made the kitchen almost unbearable in the afternoon warmth, but neither of them moved away. How long until it's done? Lily asked. 25 minutes. You want to wait here or come back? I'll wait. The girl climbed back onto her stool. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you come here? To the ranch, I mean. Mrs. Chen says most women don't want to work this far from town. Evelyn leaned against the counter, considering how much truth to give an 8-year-old. My family needed money. My brother found out about the job and I took it. Do you like it here? The work's hard. The hours are long. The men can be difficult. Evelyn smiled slightly. But the kitchen's mine now. Nobody tells me how to run it. That's worth something. Papa says you're a good cook, better than Cookie. Cookie set a pretty low bar from what I understand. Lily giggled, then covered her mouth like she'd done something wrong. It struck Evelyn how carefully controlled this child was, how afraid she seemed of taking up too much space or making too much noise. She recognized it because she'd been the same way after her mother died, trying to be perfect, trying not to be a burden. The cornbread came out golden and perfect. And when Evelyn drizzled honey over the top while it was still warm, the smell filled the kitchen like a promise. She cut a piece for Lily and watched the girl take her first bite. It's so good, Lily said, and there was something like wonder in her voice. You made it. You should be proud. We made it. Fair enough? Evelyn cut herself a small piece. We made it. They were still sitting there eating warm cornbread and not talking about dead mothers when Ridgewell appeared in the doorway. Evelyn started to stand, but he waved her back down. Papa, look what we made. Lily held up her piece of cornbread like a trophy. Ridgewell's expression softened in a way Evelyn had never seen before. Looks good, sweetheart. Miss Harper teaching you her secrets? All of them, Evelyn said. She's a quick learner. She gets that from her mother. He said it casually, but Evelyn saw the flash of pain that crossed his face before he locked it down again. Lily, why don't you go wash up for dinner? Mrs. Chen's making stew. Can Miss Harper eat with us? Miss Harper has her own dinner to cook for the ranch hands. Lily's face fell, and Evelyn felt an unexpected pang of disappointment herself. But she stood up and started cleaning the kitchen, giving them space. Maybe another time, she said to Lily. We can make biscuits next. I know a recipe that'll change your life. After Lily left, practically skipping, Ridgewell lingered in the doorway. Evelyn kept cleaning, hyper-aware of his presence. Thank you, he finally said, for spending time with her. She doesn't get much. She doesn't have many people to talk to out here. She's a sweet kid. She is, he paused. But I need to be clear about something, Miss Harper. Lily's been through enough. I won't have her getting attached to someone who might not stay. Evelyn turned to face him, meeting his eyes directly. I signed a 6-month contract, and I intend to honor it. After that, we'll see. But I'm not the kind of person who makes promises to children and then disappears. Good. He nodded once, sharp and final. The men are asking if you can make fried chicken tomorrow. Apparently word's gotten around about your cooking and now they have opinions. Let me guess, they want their mother's recipes. Something like that. I'll see what I can do." After he left, Evelyn finished cleaning and walked back to the bunkhouse through the evening light. The ranch was quieter now, most of the men finishing up their work or already washing up for dinner. She could hear cattle lowing in the distance and the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Billy Carson intercepted her halfway across the yard, his hat in his hands and that same cocky grin on his face. "Miss Harper, I was wondering—" "No," Evelyn said without breaking stride. "You don't even know what I was going to ask." "Doesn't matter. The answer's still no. I just wanted to know if you needed help carrying anything." Evelyn stopped and turned to look at him. He was young, probably hadn't been working the ranch more than a year, and he had the kind of eager energy that probably got him into trouble regularly. "I don't need help, Billy, but thank you for asking. Maybe I could help you in the kitchen sometime. I'm real good at peeling potatoes." "I bet you are. But Mr. Ridgewell has rules about men in the kitchen during my work hours." "What about after work hours?" "Still no." She left him standing there, looking dejected, and headed into the bunkhouse. The kitchen was already starting to feel like home, which was dangerous. She'd learned not to get too comfortable anywhere because comfortable meant it hurt more when you had to leave. But as she started preparing dinner, fried chicken like the men wanted, with mashed potatoes and green beans and fresh biscuits, she couldn't help feeling something settle in her chest. Purpose, maybe. Or just the satisfaction of doing something she was actually good at. The dinner rush was controlled chaos as always. The men filed in, loud and hungry, tracking in dust and sweat. They loaded their plates and found seats at the long tables, and Evelyn kept the food coming. "This is incredible, Miss Harper," Tommy said, biting into a piece of chicken. "Better than Cookie by a mile." "Better than Cookie by 1,000 miles, another hand added. "Cookie couldn't fry chicken if his life depended on it." "Remember that time he tried to make dumplings?" someone called from the back. "Damn things were like rocks, near broke a tooth." Laughter rippled through the room, and Evelyn found herself smiling despite the exhaustion. These weren't bad men. Rough around the edges, sure, and some of them probably had histories they weren't proud of, but they worked hard. They were honest about what they wanted, and they appreciated good food. After dinner, she was elbow-deep in dishwater when Mrs. Chen appeared with a covered basket. "From Lily," the older woman said, setting it on the clean end of the prep table. "She wanted you to have some of the cornbread you made together." Evelyn dried her hands and lifted the cloth covering. Inside were 3 pieces of cornbread wrapped carefully in napkins, still slightly warm. She didn't have to do that. "No, but she wanted to." Mrs. Chen picked up a dish towel and started drying plates without being asked. "You were kind to her today. She noticed. I just taught her to make cornbread." "You did more than that, and you know it." The older woman's eyes were sharp. "That child is lonely. Her father loves her, but he doesn't know how to talk to her. I do my best, but I'm not family, just the help. You're more than that." "Maybe, but it's not the same as having a mother." Mrs. Chen set down a dried plate and picked up another. "Be careful, Miss Harper. Lily loses people easily. Her mother, then a series of housekeepers who couldn't handle the isolation. Don't become another person who leaves." "Mr. Ridgewell already gave me that speech." "I'm sure he did, but I'm saying it differently. Dawson worries about protecting Lily from disappointment. I worry about the girl having no one to teach her how to be a woman in this world." She looked at Evelyn directly. "She needs someone like you, someone strong who doesn't quit when things get hard." The weight of that expectation settled on Evelyn's shoulders like a physical thing. "I'll do my best. That's all anyone can ask." The weeks rolled forward with gathering momentum. Evelyn's routine became fixed. Wake at 4:30, start breakfast, cook, clean, start lunch, cook, clean, start dinner, cook, clean, collapse into bed. On Saturdays, she taught Lily something new in the kitchen. On Sundays, she caught up on mending and wrote short letters to Thomas that she never got responses to. The money she earned went straight back to Red Hollow with Coop's supply runs, along with terse notes about how the debts should be paid. She had no idea if Thomas was actually following through. She tried not to think about it too much because thinking about it made her angry, and anger was exhausting. The ranch hands had stopped testing her and started actively trying to help. They brought her fresh eggs from the chicken coop without being asked. They made sure the woodpile for the stove never ran low. They even organized themselves into shifts for cleaning up after meals, which had definitely not been happening under Cookie's tenure. "You've got them trained," Holloway observed one afternoon, watching the men actually scrape their plates and stack them properly. "I just treat them like human beings," Evelyn said. "Turns out that works." Revolutionary concept. She was starting to understand the rhythm of ranch life. The early mornings when the world was still dark and quiet, the midday heat that made everything shimmer, the evenings when the men would sit on the bunkhouse porch smoking and telling stories until the stars came out. It was harsh and isolated, but there was an honesty to it that Red Hollow had never had. Then Sarah Mitchell came to visit, and everything got complicated. She arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in a fancy buggy driven by her father, who owned the largest general store in Red Hollow. Sarah was everything Evelyn wasn't: polished, pretty, dressed in clothes that cost more than Evelyn made in 3 months. And she was there specifically to see Dawson Ridgewell. Evelyn was in the bunkhouse kitchen when she heard the commotion in the yard. Through the window, she watched Sarah step down from the buggy like she was descending from a throne, one gloved hand accepting Ridgewell's assistance with practiced grace. "Well, that's interesting," Billy said, appearing at Evelyn's elbow and making her jump. "Don't often get visitors out here, especially not ones that fancy." "Who is she?" "Sarah Mitchell. Her daddy's trying to marry her off to Mr. Ridgewell. Been after him for months." Evelyn turned back to her bread dough, punching it down harder than necessary. "That's none of my business." "Maybe not, but it's good gossip. She's been out here 3 times now. Brings fancy food from town like our cooking isn't good enough." "Our cooking?" Billy grinned. "Your cooking, I mean. She brings these little sandwiches and cakes and acts like she's doing us all a favor." Evelyn watched through the window as Ridgewell led Sarah and her father toward the main house. The woman moved with confidence, like she belonged there already. "Does Mr. Ridgewell seem interested?" The question was out before Evelyn could stop it. "Hard to say. Boss keeps his cards close, but he hasn't sent her away yet." Billy leaned against the counter. "Why, you jealous? Don't be ridiculous. I'm just saying you got competition for the boss's attention." Evelyn whirled on him. "I'm the cook. I don't want anyone's attention. I want to do my job and get paid. That's it." Sure. But Billy was still grinning when he left. Evelyn tried to focus on her work, but her eyes kept drifting to the main house. She told herself she didn't care who Ridgewell courted or married. It was his life and his business. But something uncomfortable was churning in her stomach anyway. That evening, Mrs. Chen appeared in the kitchen looking tired and irritated. "The Mitchell woman is staying for dinner," she announced. "Mr. Ridgewell has requested that you prepare something special for the main house." "What kind of special?" He didn't specify, just something impressive. Mrs. Chen's expression suggested what she thought of this request. "I'm sorry to add to your workload." "It's fine." Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron, thinking, "I can do a roasted chicken with herbs, potatoes, and that apple tart recipe my mother used to make. Will that work?" "Anything will work better than those dry sandwiches she brought." The words were said with such venom that Evelyn couldn't help smiling. "Not a fan?" "She treats me like furniture, talks right over me like I'm not there." Mrs. Chen started pulling out ingredients. "I've worked for Dawson Ridgewell for 10 years. I helped deliver Lily when her mother went into early labor. But to that woman, I'm invisible." "Then let's make sure dinner's so good she chokes on it." They worked together with focused intensity. While Evelyn handled the ranch hand's regular dinner, Mrs. Chen helped prepare the special meal for the main house. The chicken came out perfectly golden, the potatoes crispy on the outside and fluffy inside, and the apple tart smelled like heaven. "This will do," Mrs. Chen said with satisfaction. "This will absolutely do." Evelyn finished serving the ranch hands and was cleaning up when she heard raised voices from the direction of the main house. She tried to ignore them, but they grew louder, and then a door slammed hard enough to echo across the yard. Through the window, she saw Sarah Mitchell storm out of the main house and practically throw herself into her father's buggy. Her face was red, and her mouth was set in a furious line. The buggy pulled away fast, wheels kicking up dust. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway of the bunkhouse kitchen, breathing hard like she'd been running. "Well," she said, "that went poorly. What happened?" "Miss Mitchell made the mistake of insulting my cooking in front of Mr. Ridgewell. Then she suggested he send Lily away to boarding school so he could focus on remarrying properly." Mrs. Chen's smile was sharp. "He asked her to leave." Because of Lily? Because Dawson Ridgewell might be hard, but he's not a fool. He knows what matters. The older woman sat down heavily. Also, he might have mentioned that the ranch already has an excellent cook and doesn't need fancy sandwiches from town. Evelyn felt her face heat. He said that? Among other things, some of which were not particularly polite. Mrs. Chen looked at her carefully. You should know that people in town are going to talk about this. Sarah Mitchell is not someone who takes rejection well. I didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. You're the other woman in the narrative, whether you want to be or not. The warning sat heavy in Evelyn's chest, but she pushed it aside. She had work to do, and she couldn't afford to worry about town gossip from 20 miles away, except the gossip came to her. The next supply run, Coop pulled her aside before he left. You should know folks in Red Hollow are talking, he said bluntly, about you and Ridgewell. Evelyn's hands tightened on the crate she was carrying. There's nothing to talk about. I know that and you know that. But Sarah Mitchell's been telling anyone who'll listen that you're trying to trap the boss into marriage. Says you're using the daughter to get close to him. That's insane. Yep, but people believe what they want to believe. Coop scratched his beard. Just thought you should know. Your brother's hearing it too. How is Thomas? Sober, last I saw him. He's been doing odd jobs around town. Trying, at least. It was the best news Evelyn had heard in weeks. Thank you for telling me. After Coop left, she stood in the yard feeling the weight of invisible eyes judging her from miles away. She'd come out here to escape Red Hollow's judgment, but apparently distance didn't matter. People would talk regardless of the truth. Don't let it get to you, Holloway said, appearing beside her. Small-town gossip is like wildfire. Burns hot and fast, but doesn't last. What if it does last? Then you keep your head up and do your job. That's all you can control. But the gossip had already planted seeds of doubt in the minds of the ranch hands. Evelyn started noticing the way some of them looked at her, speculative, measuring. Billy stopped his cheerful flirting. Even Tommy seemed more distant. The breaking point came 3 weeks later during Saturday lunch service. Evelyn was bringing out a fresh pot of stew when she overheard two of the newer hands talking in voices they probably thought were quiet. I'm telling you, she's working an angle. Women like that always are. You really think she's after the boss? Why else would she be spending so much time with the kid? She's setting herself up. Evelyn set down the pot harder than necessary, making both men jump. You have something to say to me, she said coldly. Say it to my face. The older of the two, a man named Garrett, who'd been working the ranch for maybe a month, stood up slowly. He was big, probably thought his size made him intimidating. Just making conversation, ma'am. About me, behind my back. While eating food I cooked for you. Didn't mean any offense. Then what did you mean? Evelyn crossed her arms. Go ahead, say it clearly. The room had gone silent. Every man was watching now, waiting to see how this would play out. Garrett's face reddened. Look, we all see what's going on. You're working the boss and his kid, trying to move up from cook to lady of the house. It's obvious. Is it? Evelyn's voice was flat and dangerous. And what evidence do you have for this theory? You spend half your time at the main house. You're always with the little girl. The boss protects you when people talk. I spend time at the main house because Mrs. Chen needs help, and Mr. Ridgewell requests it. I spend time with Lily because she's a lonely child who asked me to teach her to cook. And if people are talking, that's their problem, not mine. Still looks suspicious. Something in Evelyn snapped. The weeks of exhaustion, the stress of trying to prove herself, the unfairness of being judged for doing nothing wrong, it all boiled over. You want to know what's suspicious, Garrett? A man who's been here less than a month thinking he has the right to comment on my character. You want to know what else is suspicious? The fact that you're apparently spending your work time gossiping like a washwoman instead of doing your job. Now hold on. I'm not finished. Evelyn stepped closer, and despite the size difference, Garrett backed up. I came here to work. I've done nothing but work since the day I arrived. I wake up before all of you, I go to bed after all of you, and in between I make sure you're fed 3 times a day with food that doesn't poison you. If you have a problem with me, take it up with Mr. Ridgewell. Otherwise, keep my name out of your mouth. The silence was absolute. Then Holloway's voice cut through it. Garrett, Reynolds, you're both on night watch for the next week. Maybe some quiet time will teach you not to bite the hand that feeds you. Mr. Holloway, did I stutter? The two men left, and slowly the normal noise of the dining room resumed. But Evelyn could feel something had changed. Lines had been drawn. She finished the meal service in mechanical silence, then retreated to her room and sat on the edge of her bed with her head in her hands. She'd made a scene. She'd lost her temper. Ridgewell was probably going to fire her for causing trouble. The knock on her door came 20 minutes later. "Come in." Mrs. Chen entered, closing the door softly behind her. "That was quite a performance. I shouldn't have lost my temper." "Probably not, but I enjoyed watching it anyway." The older woman sat down beside her. "Those men had it coming. You've done nothing wrong, and they know it. It doesn't matter what I've done or haven't done. People believe what they want. True. But sometimes you have to stand up for yourself anyway." Mrs. Chen patted her knee. "Mr. Ridgewell heard about the incident. He wants to see you." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "To fire me? I don't think so, but you should go find out." The walk to the main house felt like walking to an execution. Evelyn's hands were shaking and she couldn't make them stop. She'd finally found something stable, something that gave her purpose, and she was about to lose it because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. Ridgewell was in his office, standing by the window with his back to the door. He didn't turn when she entered. "Mr. Ridgewell, Holloway told me what happened." His voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. "He also told me what Garrett said to you. I lost my temper. It won't happen again." "You defended yourself against baseless accusations. That's not the same as losing your temper." Evelyn blinked, thrown. What?" Ridgewell finally turned to face her. His expression was unreadable. "I hired you to cook, Miss Harper, not to be subjected to gossip and innuendo from men who don't know anything about you. Garrett and Reynolds are gone. I sent them packing an hour ago." "You fired them? Because of me?" "I fired them because they created a hostile work environment and violated the basic respect I expect from anyone who works for me." He moved to his desk, leaning against it. "I also fired them because what they said was offensive and untrue, and I won't have it on my ranch. People are going to talk more now. They'll say you're protecting me because what?" His eyes were sharp. "Because I value good work? Because I don't tolerate bullying? Let them talk." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." He crossed his arms. "You work hard. You do your job well. You've been kind to my daughter without asking for anything in return. Those are facts. Everything else is noise." Evelyn felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm being selfish. You're the best cook this ranch has had in 5 years, and I'm not losing you because some men can't keep their mouths shut." He paused. "But I need to know if this job is still working for you, if the gossip becomes too much. If you want to leave, I don't want to leave." The words came out fiercer than she intended. Ridgewell's eyebrows rose slightly. "I signed a contract," Evelyn continued, trying to sound more professional. "I intend to honor it, and I'm not going to let small-minded gossip drive me away from honest work." "Good." He nodded once. "Then we're settled. Get back to work, Miss Harper." She was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. "Evelyn?" It was the first time he'd used her first name. She turned back. "You did the right thing today. Standing up for yourself. Don't ever apologize for that." Something in his expression made her chest feel strange. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and left quickly. Walking back to the bunkhouse through the evening light, Evelyn felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, the worry about judgment and gossip and losing what little stability she'd found. But underneath it was something harder, something forged from weeks of proving herself against impossible odds. She belonged here, not because someone had given her permission, but because she'd earned it, and she'd be damned if she'd let anyone take that away. The gossip should have died down after Garrett and Reynolds were sent packing, but instead it festered like an infected wound. Word spread through the neighboring ranches and eventually back to Red Hollow, each retelling adding new embellishments until the story bore no resemblance to truth. By the time it circled back to Thornridge, Evelyn had supposedly seduced half the ranch hands, manipulated Ridgewell into firing good men, and was actively scheming to become the new Mrs. Ridgewell through whatever means necessary. The worst part was that most of the remaining ranch hands didn't believe a word of it. But belief didn't matter when the poison was already in the well. Evelyn first noticed the change when she went into town with Mrs. Chen for supplies. It was early October, 3 months into her contract, and the older woman had insisted she needed to get away from the ranch for a day. Wow. "You've been working yourself to death," Mrs. Chen said, as their wagon rolled toward Red Hollow. "A change of scenery will do you good." What it did was remind Evelyn why she'd been happy to leave in the first place. The general store went silent when they walked in. Mrs. Brennan's face pinched into something that looked like she'd been sucking on lemons, and the two other women shopping suddenly found the fabric displays fascinating. "Mrs. Chen," Mrs. Brennan said, her tone excessively polite. "And Miss Harper. What a surprise." "We need supplies," Mrs. Chen said flatly. She'd never had patience for small-town politics. "The usual order, plus extra flour and sugar." While Mrs. Brennan gathered their items with pointed slowness, Evelyn felt the weight of whispers like bugs crawling on her skin. She couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. The tone said everything. "I heard she's got her hooks in that poor man," one of the women murmured, not quite quietly enough. "Using the motherless child, too. Shameless." Evelyn's hands clenched into fists inside her coat pockets. Mrs. Chen touched her arm gently, a silent warning to stay calm. But calm became impossible when Sarah Mitchell walked into the store with two of her friends, saw Evelyn, and smiled like a cat that had cornered a mouse. "Why, Evelyn Harper," Sarah said, her voice dripping false sweetness. "I didn't expect to see you back in civilization. Don't you have ranch hands to feed?" "It's my day off." "How nice for you. I suppose Mr. Ridgewell is very generous with his time off, among other things." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn turned to face her fully. "Is there something you want to say to me, Miss Mitchell?" "Not at all. I'm just making conversation." Sarah examined her gloves with exaggerated care. "Though I must say, it takes a certain kind of woman to position herself the way you have, using a grieving child to insinuate yourself into a household. It's quite clever, really." "I'm teaching her to cook, that's all." "Of course that's all." Sarah's smile sharpened. "Just like it's pure coincidence that Dawson fired 2 men for speaking honestly about the situation, or that he rejected my company in favor of protecting yours." "He rejected your company because you insulted his daughter and his staff," Mrs. Chen interjected coldly. "Don't rewrite history to soothe your wounded pride." Sarah's face flushed red. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me clearly." Mrs. Chen stepped forward, and despite being a head shorter than Sarah, she somehow seemed more imposing. "You're embarrassed that a man chose his child's well-being over your social climbing, so you're taking it out on someone who's done nothing but work hard and mind her own business. How dare you?" "I dare, because I've known Dawson Ridgewell for 10 years and you've known him for 10 minutes. I know his character. You just know his bank account." The entire store was watching now, not even pretending to shop anymore. Sarah looked around at her audience, realized she was losing, and did what cornered animals always do. She lashed out. "At least I'm not some charity case he felt sorry for," Sarah said, turning her venom back on Evelyn. "Everyone knows your family's drowning in debt. You took this job out of desperation, not skill. You're nothing but a desperate woman clinging to the first opportunity that came along." Something in Evelyn's chest went very cold and very still. "You're right," she said quietly. "I did take this job out of desperation. My father died owing money, and my mother followed him 6 months later. My brother was drinking himself to death, and we were about to lose everything. So yes, I was desperate. And you know what? I'm not ashamed of that." She stepped closer to Sarah, who actually backed up slightly. "What I'm ashamed of," Evelyn continued, "is that I let people like you make me feel small for doing what needed to be done. I work from before dawn until after dark every single day. I feed 20 men 3 meals a day, and I do it well. I've earned every penny I make, and I owe apologies to no one, especially not to someone whose biggest accomplishment is being born into a family with money. You have no right to speak to me that way. I have every right. You came at me first, remember? You spread lies about me to make yourself feel better about being rejected. That's not my problem, Miss Mitchell. That's yours." The silence in the store was absolute. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. Mrs. Chen took Evelyn's arm. "We'll take our supplies now, Mrs. Brennan, and we won't be back. There's a new general store in Cooperville that will appreciate our business more." They left with their supplies and their dignity intact. But Evelyn's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the reins on the way back to the ranch. "I shouldn't have said those things," she said after a mile of silence. "Yes, you should have. That girl needed to hear it. Now she'll spread more lies. Make things worse." Things were already as worse as they could get. Mrs. Chen glanced at her. "You stood up for yourself. You told the truth. That matters more than what people say about it." But when they got back to Thornridge, Evelyn discovered that the confrontation in town was already common knowledge. Coop must have been there, or someone else who'd ridden back fast with the news. The ranch hands looked at her differently now, some with respect, some with wariness, like she was a bomb that might go off at any moment. And Ridgewell summoned her to his office before she'd even finished unloading the wagon. "I heard about what happened in town," he said, without preamble. Evelyn lifted her chin. "I defended myself. If that's a problem—" "It's not a problem, but it is a complication." He gestured for her to sit, and after a moment's hesitation, she did. "The Mitchell family has influence in Red Hollow. Sarah's father controls most of the supply routes this direction. If they decide to make things difficult for us, they can. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I'm not angry with you." He leaned back in his chair looking tired. "I'm angry at the situation, at the way gossip spreads like disease and ruins people for no reason except that some folks have nothing better to do. You could fire me. That would solve the problem. That would give them exactly what they want. No." He shook his head firmly. "You stay, and we ride this out. Eventually something more interesting will happen, and they'll forget all about us. And if they don't, then we deal with it." He looked at her directly. "I meant what I said before, Evelyn. You've done nothing wrong. I won't punish you for other people's ugliness." The way he said her name sent an uncomfortable warmth through her chest. She pushed it away firmly. "What about Lily?" she asked. "If this keeps getting worse, it could affect her." "Lily's 8 years old and isolated on a ranch. She doesn't hear town gossip. But she will eventually. Kids aren't stupid." Ridgewell's jaw tightened. "I know. I'm trying to protect her from it as long as possible. Maybe I should stop the cooking lessons, just to remove any ammunition." "Absolutely not." His voice was sharp enough that Evelyn flinched. "Those lessons are the happiest I've seen Lily in years. She talks about them all week, practices in between, actually smiles. I won't take that away from her because some people can't mind their own business. It might make things easier." "I don't care about easier. I care about what's right." He stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. "My daughter lost her mother before she was old enough to remember her. She's growing up in the middle of nowhere with no other children, no female influence except Mrs. Chen. You're teaching her things she needs to know. You're giving her something to look forward to. That matters more than gossip." Evelyn swallowed against the sudden tightness in her throat. "I care about her too. You should know that. She's a good kid." "She is." He turned back around and his expression had softened slightly. "Which is why I'm asking you not to pull away from her because of this situation. She's already lost too many people." "I won't. I promise." The word hung between them for a moment, weighted with more than she'd intended. "Good," Ridgewell said finally. "Now get some rest. You've had a long day." But rest was impossible. Evelyn lay in her narrow bed that night, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for sleep and thinking about impossible things. The way Ridgewell had looked at her in his office, the way her name sounded in his voice, the dangerous warmth that spread through her chest when he defended her. She couldn't afford those feelings, wouldn't let herself have them. She was the cook, and he was her employer, and that's all they could ever be, no matter what the gossips thought or what her traitorous heart wanted. The next morning, a young ranch hand named Peter knocked on her door while she was starting breakfast. "Miss Harper, there's someone here to see you." Her heart sank. More confrontation, probably. Someone from town come to continue what Sarah had started. But when she walked into the yard, she found Thomas standing beside Coop's wagon, looking haggard and nervous. "Thomas?" She barely recognized her own brother. He'd lost weight, and his eyes were clearer than she'd seen them in months. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you, to tell you." He twisted his hat in his hands. "The debts are paid off. All of them. The house is ours again." Evelyn felt the world tilt slightly. "What?" "The money you've been sending. I used every penny for the debts like you said. I didn't drink it, didn't waste it. I swear." The words came out in a rush. Mr. Patterson helped me organize it all, make sure the payments went to the right places. And as of yesterday, we're clear. We're clear, Evelyn repeated numbly. The house is ours. No more bank breathing down our necks. Thomas's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. You did it, Evie. You saved us. She should have felt relieved, triumphant even. This was why she'd come here, why she'd endured the isolation and the gossip and the backbreaking work. But all she felt was a strange emptiness. That's good, she said. That's really good, Thomas. You can come home now. Your contract's only half done, but with the debts paid, you don't have to stay. We can figure something else out. Come home. Back to Red Hollow. Back to the failing homestead. Back to Thomas and his promises to do better. Back to being poor and judged and powerless. I'm not coming home. Thomas blinked. What? I signed a 6-month contract. I'm going to finish it. But we don't need the money anymore. Maybe I need this. The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. I'm good at this job, Thomas. I'm good at something for the first time in my life and people respect me for it. Well, most people. And I'm not ready to give that up. But the gossip. I heard what's being said about you in town, about you in Ridgewell. It's not true. I know that, but it doesn't matter if people believe it. Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice. Come home before this ruins you completely. Before people think... I don't care what people think. Evelyn was surprised by how much she meant it. For once in my life, I'm doing something for me. Not for you, not for the family name, not for what the town expects. For me. Evie, go home, Thomas. Take care of the house. Get yourself properly sober. Find work that matters. And let me finish what I started here. He looked at her like she was a stranger, and maybe she was. The desperate, defeated girl who'd left Red Hollow 3 months ago had died somewhere on the road to Thornridge. What stood in her place was harder, sharper, less willing to bend. If that's what you want, Thomas said quietly. It is. After he left, Evelyn stood in the yard watching the wagon disappear down the road. Mrs. Chen found her there 10 minutes later, still staring at nothing. Your brother? The older woman asked. He said the debts are paid, the house is saved. That's wonderful news. He wanted me to come home, and you said no. It wasn't a question. Evelyn turned to look at her. How did you know? Because you finally found somewhere you fit. That's not something you give up easily. Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. Besides, Lily would be devastated if you left. It's not just about Lily. I know. The way she said it made Evelyn's face heat. There's nothing between me and Mr. Ridgewell. I didn't say there was, but there could be if you both weren't so stubborn about it. Mrs. Chen, I'm old, not blind. I see how he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching, and I see how you look at him. The older woman's expression grew serious, but I also know that timing matters, and right now the timing is terrible, so you're both doing the right thing by keeping your distance. This conversation is inappropriate. Probably, but someone needs to say it out loud so you both stop pretending. Mrs. Chen patted her arm. Just remember that gossip eventually fades. What you do with your life after it fades is what actually matters. The weeks that followed were tense and strange. The ranch settled into an uneasy rhythm where everyone was carefully polite, but nobody seemed comfortable. The remaining hands did their jobs and ate Evelyn's food and said thank you, but the easy camaraderie from before was gone. Evelyn threw herself into work with almost manic intensity. She expanded the menu, trying new recipes, making everything from scratch even when shortcuts were available. The pantry became her kingdom and the kitchen her fortress, and if she was working too hard to think about anything else, well, that was the point. Lily was her only real comfort. The girl still came for her Saturday lessons, and in that small pocket of time, everything felt normal. They made bread and pies and cookies, and Lily chattered about books she was reading and things Mrs. Chen had taught her, and Evelyn could almost forget the ugliness lurking outside the kitchen walls. It was during one of these lessons, in mid-November, that everything finally broke. They were making sugar cookies, Lily carefully rolling out dough while Evelyn prepared the cutters, when the sound of raised voices erupted from the yard. Both of them froze. "Stay here," Evelyn said firmly, but Lily was already moving toward the window. Through the glass, they could see a group of men on horseback, not ranch hands, strangers. And in the middle of them, arguing with Holloway, was Sarah Mitchell's father, Nathaniel Mitchell. Evelyn's stomach dropped. "Go find your father," she told Lily. "Right now." The girl ran, and Evelyn walked out into the yard on legs that felt like they were made of water. Mitchell was a big man, red-faced and angry, and he was shouting loud enough for half the ranch to hear. "Absolute disgrace! That woman has made a mockery of decent society with her behavior, and I won't stand for it. Mr. Mitchell, you need to calm down," Holloway said, his hand resting meaningfully on his sidearm. "I'll calm down when that scheming harlot is removed from this ranch and sent back where she belongs." Evelyn stepped into view, her hands clenched at her sides. "I'm right here, Mr. Mitchell. If you have something to say about me, say it to my face." Mitchell whirled on her, his face purpling with rage. "You've got nerve. I'll give you that. Turning my daughter into a laughingstock, spreading your legs for—" "Finish that sentence and you'll regret it," Ridgewell's voice cut across the yard like a whip crack. He'd appeared on the main house porch with Lily behind him, and his face was carved from stone. Mitchell actually took a step back. "Ridgewell, I'm here as a courtesy to tell you that you're harboring a woman of loose morals who's been spreading lies about my daughter. Well, the only lies being spread are the ones your daughter started." Ridgewell descended the porch steps slowly, every movement controlled. "Miss Harper has done nothing but her job. Your daughter, on the other hand, has spent months slandering a woman she barely knows because she can't accept rejection." "How dare you? How dare I?" Ridgewell's voice was dangerously quiet now. "You rode onto my property with armed men to harass my employee. You called her a harlot in front of my daughter, and you have the nerve to talk to me about daring?" Mitchell's hand moved toward his gun, and suddenly half a dozen ranch hands materialized from various buildings, all armed, all watching. "I wouldn't," Holloway said quietly. The tableau held for a long, terrible moment. Then Mitchell seemed to realize how badly he'd miscalculated. He was outnumbered and outgunned on someone else's land, and nothing he did here would end well for him. "This isn't over," he snarled. "There's a county social coming up in 3 weeks, a cooking competition. If your precious cook is so talented, let her prove it in front of the whole county. Let everyone see what she's really made of. Miss Harper doesn't have to prove anything to you." "But she will." Mitchell's smile was ugly. "Because if she doesn't show up, everyone will know it's because she's a coward and a fraud. Word will spread that Thornridge Ranch employs liars and home wreckers. That'll do wonders for your business." He was backing Ridgewell into a corner, and they both knew it. Refuse the challenge, and the gossip would explode. Accept it, and Evelyn would be thrown into a public spectacle designed to humiliate her. "I'll do it," Evelyn said before she could think better of it. Every head turned to look at her. "I'll enter your competition," she continued, her voice stronger than she felt. "And when I win, you and your daughter will apologize publicly for every lie you've spread about me." Mitchell laughed. "When you win, girl, you'll be competing against the best cooks in 3 counties, women who've been perfecting their craft for decades. You really think some desperate ranch cook can beat them?" "I guess we'll find out." "Evelyn, you don't have to do this," Ridgewell said, but there was something in his eyes that looked like pride. "Yes, I do." She met Mitchell's gaze directly. 3 weeks. I'll be there." After Mitchell and his men left, Evelyn stood in the yard trying to figure out what she'd just committed herself to. A public cooking competition in front of the entire county, where she'd be judged by the same people who'd been slandering her for months. She'd lost her mind. Absolutely lost it. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Holloway said. "Probably both." Ridgewell walked over to her, his expression unreadable. "You understand what you've just agreed to? This won't be friendly. They're going to do everything they can to make you fail." "I know." "You'll be cooking in front of people who already hate you based on gossip." "I know." "And if you lose, then I lose." Evelyn looked up at him. "But at least I'll have tried. At least I'll have stood up for myself instead of running away." Something shifted in his expression. "You're not planning to lose, are you?" "Not if I can help it." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his whole face. "Good, because I've tasted your cooking, Miss Harper. And if those county ladies think they can beat you, they're in for a surprise." From the porch, Lily called out, "Can I help you practice, Miss Evelyn?" Evelyn turned to look at the girl, who was practically vibrating with excitement despite not fully understanding what had just happened. "Absolutely," Evelyn said. "I'm going to need all the help I can get." That night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, Evelyn let herself feel the full weight of terror at what she'd agreed to. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks until she'd stand in front of everyone who judged her and prove them wrong, or fail spectacularly and confirm everything they believed. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother, who'd faced down worse odds with grace and strength. About the months she'd survived at Thornridge despite everything working against her. About the feeling of Lily's small hand in hers while they cooked together, and Ridgewell's rare smile, and the satisfaction of feeding hungry men food that made them grateful. She had 3 weeks. She'd better make them count. The preparation consumed her. Every spare moment between regular meal services, Evelyn tested recipes, adjusted techniques, and pushed herself harder than she'd ever pushed before. Her mother's recipe book became her Bible, each stained page a roadmap to something she needed to perfect. Mrs. Chen threw herself into helping with an intensity that surprised everyone. The older woman appeared in the bunkhouse kitchen early one morning with a wooden box full of ingredients Evelyn had never seen before. "What's all this?" Evelyn asked, examining jars of unfamiliar spices and dried herbs. "My grandmother's pantry. Well, what I could recreate of it." Mrs. Chen set the box on the prep table with reverence. She was the best cook in her province back in China, taught me everything she knew before we came to America. "Mrs. Chen, I can't use your family recipes in a county competition. That wouldn't be right." "You're not using my recipes, you're learning techniques." The older woman pulled out a jar of star anise. "These county ladies, they'll make the same dishes their mothers and grandmothers made. Good food, traditional food, but predictable. You need something that stands out without being too strange. And you think Chinese cooking techniques will help with that?" "I think flavor is flavor, regardless of where it comes from. A touch of ginger in apple pie? Nobody will know what makes it special, just that it is." Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. "Besides, your mother's recipes are solid foundations. We're just going to make them exceptional." They worked together late into the night, blending techniques and testing combinations that shouldn't work but somehow did. Evelyn's fried chicken gained a subtle heat from Sichuan peppercorns ground so fine they were nearly invisible. Her biscuits became impossibly flaky after Mrs. Chen showed her a folding technique that created dozens of delicate layers. Lily appointed herself official taste tester, showing up every afternoon after her lessons to sample whatever Evelyn had created that day. The girl had opinions too, unfiltered and honest in the way only children could be. "This one's too sweet," she announced after trying a revised apple tart recipe. "Makes my teeth hurt." Noted. Evelyn adjusted the sugar measurements in her notes. "What about the crust?" "The crust is perfect, like eating a cloud but better." "That's very poetic." "Papa says I should read more poetry. I think it's boring, but the words are pretty sometimes." Lily swung her legs from her perch on the stool. "Are you nervous about the competition?" "Terrified." "You don't look terrified." "I'm good at hiding it." Lily considered this seriously. "Papa says being scared and being brave are the same thing, just in different directions." "Your papa's a smart man. He likes you, you know." The words were delivered with such casual certainty that Evelyn nearly dropped the whisk she was holding. "Lily, he does. I can tell. He smiles more when you're around, real smiles, not the pretend ones he uses with other people." Evelyn's face felt like it was on fire. "That's not appropriate conversation for us to be having." "Why not? You like him too. You get all quiet and weird when he comes to the kitchen." "I get quiet and weird because he's my employer and I'm trying to be professional." "What's professional mean?" "It means some things are better left unsaid." Evelyn firmly changed the subject. "Now, I need your opinion on something important. For the competition, should I make 3 different dishes or focus on making one dish absolutely perfect?" Lily let herself be redirected, but the knowing look in her 8-year-old eyes suggested the conversation wasn't over, just postponed. The ranch hands had their own opinions about the upcoming competition, which they shared freely during meals. Tommy thought she should make her honey cornbread because it had made him cry that first time. Billy insisted fried chicken was the obvious choice. Others argued for stew, biscuits, pie, or the roasted vegetables she'd started serving that had somehow made carrots taste like something worth eating. "You're all wrong," Holloway announced one evening, silencing the debate. "She should make whatever she's most confident in. Competition cooking isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about executing perfectly under pressure." "You've done competition cooking, Mr. Holloway?" Evelyn asked, surprised. "My sister used to enter these things all the time, won more ribbons than she had wall space for." His expression softened with memory. "She always said the women who tried to do too much ended up doing nothing well. Pick your strength and own it." The advice resonated. Evelyn spent the next 2 days narrowing down her options, testing and retesting until she had 3 dishes that showcased different skills. A main course that demonstrated technique, a bread that showed her foundation work, and a dessert that would be her final impression. She was practicing pie crust, her 10th attempt that day, when Ridgewell appeared in the kitchen doorway. It was late, well past dinner, and she thought everyone was asleep. "You're going to work yourself to death before you even get to the competition," he said. Evelyn didn't look up from the dough she was rolling. "I need to get this right. The crust keeps cracking when I try to transfer it to the pan. You've made perfect pie crust a dozen times. I've eaten it. Perfect in this kitchen with no one watching isn't the same as perfect in front of judges looking for any reason to dismiss me." He walked into the kitchen properly, close enough that she could feel his presence even though she kept her eyes on her work. "You know you don't have to prove anything to these people. You've already proven yourself here." "With respect, sir, that's easy to say when you're not the one being called a harlot in public." The words came out sharper than she intended. She felt him stiffen beside her. "You're right," he said quietly. "I apologize. That was insensitive." Evelyn finally looked up at him, surprised. Dawson Ridgewell didn't apologize often, and when he did, it usually came with qualifications. But this was simple and direct. "I just meant," he continued, "that you have nothing to be ashamed of, regardless of what happens at this competition. Easy for you to say. Your reputation isn't on the line, isn't it?" He leaned against the prep table, close enough that she had to resist the urge to step back. "People are talking about me too, saying I'm either a fool being manipulated or a man taking advantage of a desperate woman. Either way, I come out looking bad." "I'm sorry. I didn't think about how this affected you. Don't apologize. I can handle gossip. I've been handling it since my wife died and people started speculating about whether I killed her, drove her to illness, or was simply a negligent husband." The bitterness in his voice was raw. "People talk. It's what they do when their own lives are too small to fill their time." Evelyn set down her rolling pin, giving him her full attention. "Did you? Kill her, I mean." He laughed, a short, harsh sound. "No. She died of childbed fever 3 days after Lily was born. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done. But that didn't stop people from whispering that I'd worked her too hard, that the ranch mattered more to me than she did, that if I'd gotten her to a real hospital instead of using the local midwife, she might have survived. I'm sorry." "Me too. Margaret deserved better than dying in a half-built ranch house in the middle of nowhere." He was quiet for a moment. "But I gave her what I could, and I've tried to give Lily the life Margaret would have wanted for her." "You're a good father." "I'm an adequate father who's doing his best." He met her eyes directly. "Just like you're doing your best in an impossible situation, so stop apologizing for it." The air between them felt charged with something Evelyn didn't want to name. She forced herself to look away, back to her mangled pie crust. "Your dough's getting warm," Ridgewell observed. "That's why it's cracking. You've been working it too long in a hot kitchen." "I know that. She pressed her hands against the table, frustrated. "I just need it to be perfect." "It's already perfect. You're just scared." The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't practicing because she needed to. She was practicing because, as long as she was preparing, she could avoid thinking about the actual moment when she'd have to stand in front of everyone and be judged. "What if I fail?" The words came out small and broken. "What if I get there and freeze up, or burn something, or just completely fall apart?" "Then you fail. And you get back up and keep going, same as you've done every other time life knocked you down." He reached out like he was going to touch her shoulder, then thought better of it and pulled back. "But you won't fail. You're too stubborn for that." Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. "Stubborn. That's a lovely compliment." "It's an honest one." "You don't give up, Evelyn. It's one of the things I—" He stopped, seeming to catch himself. One of the things that makes you good at this job. The almost confession hung in the air between them. Evelyn's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. I should let you get some rest, Ridgewell said, stepping back. Big day in 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 3 days. You're counting. Of course I'm counting. It's all I think about. He paused at the doorway, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. For what it's worth, I'll be there. At the competition. Front row if they'll let me. You don't have to do that. I know, but I'm going to anyway. He smiled slightly. Someone needs to watch you win. After he left, Evelyn stood in the quiet kitchen for a long time, her hand still resting on the ruined pie crust. She should have felt anxious or overwhelmed, but instead she felt something else entirely. Determined, maybe. Or just ready to stop running from the fight. The final week before the competition passed in a blur of preparation and normal ranch work that had to continue regardless of everything else. Evelyn still had to feed 20 men 3 times a day, still had to maintain her kitchen, still had to show up and be present even when her mind was racing with recipe adjustments and technique refinements. The ranch hands seemed to sense her stress and responded by being unusually helpful. They cleaned up after meals without being asked, brought her fresh eggs and vegetables from town runs, and generally tried to make her life easier in small, awkward ways. We're all rooting for you, Tommy said one evening while helping dry dishes. Even the ones who don't say it out loud. Thanks, Tommy. I mean it. You changed things here, made this place feel less like just somewhere we work and more like, I don't know, somewhere that matters. It's just food. No, it's not. It's care. It's someone giving a damn whether we eat well or eat garbage. He set down the dried plate carefully. My ma used to say you could tell how much someone valued you by what they put on your table. You put good things on our table every day. That means something. The unexpected emotion in his voice made Evelyn's throat tight. Well, I can't have you all starving. You'd be useless workers. There's the practical Miss Harper we all know. But he was smiling. You're going to do great at that competition. Show those county ladies what real cooking looks like. 2 days before the competition, a package arrived with Coop's supply run. It was addressed to Evelyn in handwriting she recognized immediately as Thomas's. Inside was a single item, their mother's apron, carefully cleaned and pressed, with a note pinned to it. Evie, Ma would want you to wear this. Show them what a Harper can do. Proud of you. About tea. Evelyn held the apron against her chest, breathing in the faint scent of home that still clung to the fabric despite the cleaning. Her mother had worn this apron for 20 years, had cooked countless meals in it, had built a reputation as one of the finest cooks in Red Hollow before circumstances had torn it all down. Now Evelyn would wear it and try to build something her mother would have been proud of. The night before the competition, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed running through recipes in her head, mentally checking and rechecking her ingredient list, worrying about everything that could go wrong. Finally, around 2 a.m, she gave up and went to the kitchen to make tea. She wasn't the only one awake. Through the window, she could see a light burning in Ridgewell's office at the main house. He was probably working on ranch accounts or correspondence, the kind of endless paperwork that kept an operation this size running. On impulse, she made a second cup of tea and carried both across the yard to the main house. She knocked softly, not wanting to wake Lily. "Come in," Ridgewell called. He looked up in surprise when she entered, setting down his pen. "Evelyn, is everything all right?" "Couldn't sleep. Thought you might want some tea." She set one of the cups on his desk, suddenly feeling foolish. "Or not. I can take it back. Tea's perfect. Thank you." He picked up the cup, cradling it in both hands. "You're not the only one who can't sleep, apparently. Ranch business?" "Always." He gestured at the papers spread across his desk. End-of-year accounts, supply orders for winter, salary calculations. The glamorous life of a ranch owner. Evelyn sat down in the chair across from him without being invited, too tired to stand on formality. "Do you ever regret it, building all this?" "Some days. Usually the days when something breaks, someone quits, or the cattle decide to stampede for no reason." He took a sip of tea. "But most days, no. This is what I wanted. A place that's mine, that I built with my own hands. Something to pass on to Lily. She'll do great things with it someday. Maybe. Or maybe she'll hate ranching and run off to the city to become a dancer or a teacher or anything else." He smiled at the thought. Either way, I want her to have choices. That's what this is really about, building something solid enough that she can choose her own path. That's a good way to think about it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking tea and not talking about the competition or the gossip or any of the complicated things between them. I'm terrified, Evelyn finally admitted. About tomorrow. About standing up in front of all those people who already hate me. They don't hate you. They don't even know you. They think they do. That's almost worse. Ridgewell set down his tea and looked at her directly. You want to know what I think? Not particularly, but I suspect you're going to tell me anyway. That startled a real laugh out of him. Fair enough. I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You took a job nobody wanted, in a place nobody wants to be, and you turned it into something that matters. You didn't complain, didn't quit when things got hard, didn't let anyone make you small. That's not someone who's going to fall apart at a county cooking competition. You have a lot of faith in someone you've only known a few months. I have faith in what I've seen. The rest is just details. He paused. Besides, I've tasted your cooking. If you lose tomorrow, it's only because the judges are blind, deaf, and have no taste buds. Despite her nerves, Evelyn smiled. That's a very specific kind of disability. I stand by it. She finished her tea and stood to leave. I should try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Evelyn. He stopped her at the door. Thank you. For the tea and for everything you've done here, regardless of what happens tomorrow. You're welcome. She turned back to look at him. And thank you for giving me a chance when nobody else would. The competition was being held in Red Hollow's Community Hall, a large wooden building that served as church, meeting house, and general gathering space for anything the town deemed important. When Evelyn arrived with Ridgewell, Mrs. Chen, and Lily in the ranch wagon, the street was already crowded with people in wagons from all over the county. Her stomach twisted into knots at the sight of it. Breathe, Mrs. Chen murmured. You've got this. Inside, the hall had been set up with cooking stations along one wall and rows of chairs for spectators on the other. There were 8 other competitors, all women, all wearing their finest dresses and most confident expressions. Sarah Mitchell stood among them, laughing at something one of the other women had said, looking perfectly at ease. When Sarah saw Evelyn enter, her smile sharpened into something predatory. Well, look who actually showed up, Sarah announced loudly enough for half the room to hear. I wasn't sure you'd have the nerve. I'm here. Evelyn kept her voice level. Where do I set up? A thin woman with a clipboard in an officious manner pointed to a station at the far end. Number 8, you'll have 3 hours to prepare 3 dishes. A main course, a bread, and a dessert. All ingredients must be provided by you. Judging begins at 2 o'clock sharp. Evelyn claimed her station and began unpacking her supplies with hands that trembled slightly. She'd brought everything she needed, measured and organized exactly the way she wanted it. Now she just had to execute. The hall was filling with spectators. She could see Ridgewell settling into a front row seat with Lily on one side and Mrs. Chen on the other. Behind them, she recognized several of the Thornridge ranch hands who must have ridden in for the event. Billy caught her eye and gave her an encouraging thumbs up. On the other side of the room, she saw Thomas slip in and find a seat near the back. He looked nervous and sober, and when their eyes met, he nodded once. The judge, a severe-looking woman named Mrs. Adelaide Blackwood, who apparently adjudicated all the county's domestic competitions, called for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the annual Harvest County Cooking Competition. Our 9 competitors will have 3 hours to prepare their dishes. Judging will be based on taste, presentation, and technical skill. The winner will receive a blue ribbon and $50 in prize money. $50. Evelyn hadn't even known there was prize money. That was more than a month's wages. Competitors, take your stations. You may begin now. The room erupted into controlled chaos. 9 women moved with purpose, firing up stoves, measuring ingredients, working with the kind of focused intensity that came from months or years of practice. Evelyn took a deep breath, tied on her mother's apron, and began. She'd chosen dishes that told a story. Fried chicken with a secret spice blend for the main course, honey touch cornbread for the bread, and her mother's apple tart with Mrs. Chen's ginger addition for dessert. Each one represented something about her journey, where she'd come from, what she'd learned, and where she hoped to go. The chicken went into the hot oil with a satisfying sizzle. While it cooked, she mixed her cornbread batter, her hands moving through the familiar motions with muscle memory precision. The apple tart would be last, timed perfectly so it came out of the oven with maximum impact. Around her, the other competitors worked with varying degrees of confidence. Sarah was making something elaborate with multiple components that required constant attention. An older woman 2 stations down was producing bread that smelled incredible. Someone else was working on what looked like a crown roast that belonged at a formal dinner party. Time became fluid. Evelyn lost herself in the rhythm of cooking, trusting her instincts and training. The chicken came out perfectly golden, the crust crispy and light. The cornbread rose beautifully, its top a perfect honey gold color. And the apple tart. The tart looked like something from a professional bakery, its lattice crust woven so precisely that Mrs. Chen actually gasped when Evelyn pulled it from the oven. 5 minutes, Mrs. Blackwood announced. Evelyn plated her dishes with shaking hands, arranging everything for maximum visual appeal. This was it. 3 hours of work, weeks of preparation, months of building toward this single moment. The judges began their rounds. There were 3 of them: Mrs. Blackwood, a local minister known for his love of good food, and a businessman from Cooperville who apparently funded these competitions. They worked methodically, tasting each competitor's dishes and making notes without revealing their opinions. When they reached Evelyn's station, she stood straight and tried to look confident. Mrs. Blackwood examined the fried chicken with a critical eye, then took a careful bite. Her expression revealed nothing. The minister tried the cornbread, then immediately took a second piece. The businessman sampled the apple tart, and his eyebrows rose slightly. They made notes and moved on to the final station without comment. The waiting was agony. Evelyn busied herself cleaning her station, but her eyes kept drifting to the judges as they conferred in low voices at the front of the room. Around her, the other competitors did the same nervous dance of cleaning and watching and trying not to appear anxious. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Mrs. Blackwood stood and called for attention. "We have reached our decision," she announced. This was a difficult competition with many skilled cooks presenting excellent dishes. However, there can be only one winner. Evelyn's heart was hammering so hard she felt dizzy. 3rd place goes to Mrs. Margaret Stone for her exceptional bread work. Polite applause. The older woman Evelyn had noticed earlier accepted her white ribbon with grace. 2nd place goes to Miss Sarah Mitchell for her ambitious and well-executed crown roast. More applause, slightly louder. Sarah's smile looked forced as she accepted her red ribbon. And 1st place. Mrs. Blackwood paused, either for drama or because she genuinely needed a moment. 1st place goes to Miss Evelyn Harper for a demonstration of fundamental cooking skills elevated to excellence. Her fried chicken showed perfect temperature control and seasoning. Her cornbread demonstrated understanding of both tradition and innovation, and her apple tart was simply the finest dessert we've tasted in years of judging these competitions. The applause that erupted was mixed, some genuine, some reluctant, some confused, but it was there. Evelyn walked forward on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, and accepted the blue ribbon and the prize money with hands that couldn't stop shaking. "Congratulations, Miss Harper," Mrs. Blackwood said quietly. "You've certainly earned this." From the front row, Lily was bouncing in her seat and clapping so enthusiastically that Ridgewell had to steady her. The ranch hands were whistling and cheering. Even Thomas was on his feet, looking proud and maybe a little shocked. But the best moment came after the official ceremony, when Nathaniel Mitchell approached with Sarah trailing reluctantly behind him. "Miss Harper," he said stiffly, "it appears I owe you an apology, as does my daughter." Sarah looked like she'd rather eat glass, but she managed to force out the words. "I apologize for the things I said about you. They were untrue and uncharitable. It wasn't sincere. It would probably never be sincere. But it was public and it was witnessed, and that was what mattered." "Apology accepted," Evelyn said simply. After they left, Ridgewell appeared at her elbow. "How does it feel to be the best cook in 3 counties?" "Terrifying and wonderful and completely unreal." She looked down at the blue ribbon in her hands. "I can't believe I actually won." "I can." He smiled at her, that real smile that transformed his whole face. "You were always going to win. You just needed to believe it yourself." Lily crashed into Evelyn with enough force to nearly knock her over, wrapping small arms around her waist. "You were amazing, The tart was perfect, and the chicken was perfect, and everything was perfect. Not quite everything, Evelyn said, hugging her back. The cornbread was a little dry on one edge. Nobody cared about one dry edge. You won! Lily pulled back, her face shining with uncomplicated joy. Can we celebrate? Can we have a party? Lily, Ridgewell started. Actually, Mrs. Chen interrupted, a party sounds appropriate. We could have it at the ranch this weekend. Invite the hands, make it a proper celebration. The idea took hold quickly. By the time they loaded back into the wagon for the journey home, plans were already being made for a party the following Saturday. Evelyn sat in the back of the wagon with her blue ribbon and her prize money, watching Red Hollow disappear behind them. She'd come back to this town a different person than she'd left it. Stronger, maybe. More certain of who she was and what she could do. You're quiet, Ridgewell observed from the driver's seat. Just thinking. About? About how strange life is. 3 months ago, I was desperate and humiliated, taking a job I didn't want because I had no other options. And now I'm riding back from winning a cooking competition with $50 in my pocket and people who actually respect me. Life has a way of surprising us, usually when we least expect it. Evelyn looked at the back of his head, at the set of his shoulders and the way he held the reins with capable, calloused hands. She thought about inappropriate feelings and dangerous possibilities and all the reasons she should keep her distance. But for today, for this moment, she let herself just be grateful. For the job, for the friends she'd made, for the strange and unexpected place she'd found herself. The rest could wait. The celebration parties became something bigger than anyone had planned. What started as a simple gathering for the ranch hands turned into an event that drew people from neighboring ranches and even a few curious folks from town who'd heard about Evelyn's win and wanted to see what all the fuss was about. She spent the entire week leading up to it in a state of controlled panic, preparing food for what she estimated would be maybe 30 people, but preparing enough for 50 just in case. The bunkhouse kitchen became her fortress again, but this time the work felt different. She wasn't proving anything anymore. She was just doing what she loved. Mrs. Chen helped without being asked, and Lily was constantly underfoot asking questions and stealing tastes of everything. Even some of the ranch hands volunteered to help set up tables in the yard and string lanterns between the buildings. You know you're creating a monster, right? Holloway said, watching her pull yet another pie from the oven. After this, the boys are going to expect celebration-level food at every meal. They can expect whatever they want. Doesn't mean they'll get it. But Evelyn was smiling as she said it. The day of the party dawned clear and unseasonably warm for late November. By mid-afternoon, wagons were already arriving, and Evelyn found herself greeting people she'd never met who acted like they'd known her for years. You're the one who beat Sarah Mitchell, a rancher's wife said, shaking Evelyn's hand enthusiastically. I've been wanting to see that girl taken down a peg for 5 years. Best entertainment I've had since the county fair. I wasn't trying to take anyone down, I was just cooking. Honey, sometimes that's exactly what taking someone down looks like. Doing your job better than they can do theirs. The woman winked. You keep doing what you're doing. By evening, the ranch yard was packed with people eating, drinking, and talking in groups that shifted and reformed like water. Evelyn moved through it all in a daze, accepting congratulations and deflecting questions about her future plans with practiced vagueness. Because the truth was, she didn't know what her future plans were. Her 6-month contract would be up in 3 months. The debts back home were paid. She could leave if she wanted to, go back to Red Hollow, or even try to find work somewhere else entirely. But the thought of leaving made her chest feel tight and hollow. She was refilling a platter of chicken when Ridgewell found her in the kitchen. You should be out there enjoying your own party, he said. I am enjoying it, just from in here where I can control things. Control. Right. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. You know people are going to talk about this too, about me throwing a party for my cook. Let them talk. I'm getting used to it. Are you really? Or are you just getting better at pretending it doesn't hurt? Evelyn set down the platter and turned to face him. Does it matter? The result's the same either way. It matters to me. The way he said it made something in her chest twist. They were alone in the kitchen, the sounds of the party muffled by distance, and suddenly the air felt charged with all the things they'd been carefully not saying for months. Dawson. She almost never used his first name, and hearing it in her own voice startled them both. I know, he said quickly. I know all the reasons why this is complicated. You work for me, people are already talking, Lily's involved, and timing is terrible. I know all of it. Then why bring it up? Because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it. Because watching you win that competition and stand up for yourself made me realize that life's too short to waste on careful. He pushed off from the doorframe, taking a step closer. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know that what's between us isn't all in my head. Evelyn's heart was hammering. It's not all in your head. Good. That's good to know. He smiled slightly. Now we can both go back to ignoring it professionally. Dawson, Evie, Papa, come quick! Lily's voice cut through the moment like a knife. She appeared in the doorway, breathless and excited. Someone from the county newspaper is here, and they want to interview Miss Evelyn about the competition. The moment shattered. Ridgewell stepped back, the careful distance reasserting itself, and Evelyn smoothed down her apron and followed Lily back out to the party. The interview was brief and awkward, the reporter more interested in the drama of beating Sarah Mitchell than in the actual cooking. But Evelyn answered the questions as honestly as she could, talking about her mother's recipes and Mrs. Chen's techniques and the importance of treating food with respect. And what about the rumors? The reporter asked, his pencil poised over his notepad. About your relationship with Mr. Ridgewell? Mr. Ridgewell is my employer. I'm his cook. That's the entire relationship. But surely, I'm sure of very few things in life, Evelyn said firmly. But I'm absolutely sure that I've done nothing wrong, and neither has Mr. Ridgewell. If people want to make up stories for their entertainment, that's their choice. But it doesn't change the facts. The reporter scribbled notes and asked a few more questions before wandering off to interview other party guests. Evelyn watched him go with a sense of weary resignation. The story would be printed with whatever angle made it most interesting, and there was nothing she could do about it. That was well handled, Mrs. Chen said, appearing at her elbow with a cup of cider. Firm, but not defensive. I'm so tired of defending myself. I know, but it's almost over. People are already moving on to other scandals. Give it another month and you'll be old news. And then what? Mrs. Chen looked at her carefully. Then you decide what you want your life to look like. Not what other people want for you, not what circumstances force on you, what you actually want. It was a dangerous question. Evelyn had spent so long just surviving that she'd forgotten to think about what she wanted beyond the next meal, the next day, the next crisis. The party wound down as the evening grew cold. People started loading into wagons and heading home, calling out thanks and congratulations. The ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse helped clean up, moving with the easy efficiency of men who'd worked together long enough to need few words. Evelyn was washing dishes when Thomas found her. She hadn't even realized he'd stayed. That was something, he said, picking up a towel to help dry. The party, I mean, and the competition last week. Ma would have been proud. Yeah, she would have. Evelyn handed him a wet plate. How are things back home? Better. I've been working for Patterson at the boarding house. Maintenance and repairs mostly. It's steady work and he doesn't mind that I'm not much of a talker. Thomas carefully dried the plate. I'm sober, 3 months now. Thomas, that's wonderful. It's one day at a time, but I'm managing. He set down the plate and turned to face her properly. I came here to say I'm sorry for pushing you into this job, for drinking away our parents' legacy, for being a burden instead of a brother. You deserved better. Evelyn felt tears prick at her eyes. You were grieving. We both were. People handle it differently. That's generous, but it's also letting me off too easy. He met her eyes directly. I was selfish and scared, and I took the coward's way out while you did the hard work. But I'm trying to do better now, be the kind of man Ma and Pa would have been proud of. They would have been proud of you today. You came all this way to support me. It's the least I could do. Thomas hesitated. Are you coming back when your contract's up? I don't know. Part of me wants to. The house is home, and you're there, and it would be easier in a lot of ways. But I've built something here. Found something that's mine, and I'm not sure I'm ready to give that up. Thomas nodded slowly. Then don't. The house will still be there if you change your mind, and I'll be fine. You don't owe me your future just because we share a past. After he left to catch a ride back to town with Coop, Evelyn stood in the quiet kitchen and let herself feel the full weight of the decision ahead of her. 3 months until her contract ended. 3 months to figure out what came next. The following weeks passed in a strange, suspended state. Winter was coming in earnest now, bringing cold that made morning starts brutal and evenings that arrived too early. The ranch settled into its winter rhythm, less work outside, more work maintaining equipment and planning for spring. Evelyn's daily routine continued unchanged, but everything felt different. The easy camaraderie with the ranch hands had returned, stronger than before. People in town nodded to her when she went for supplies instead of whispering behind her back. Even the gossip had died down to occasional speculation that lacked the venom it once had. But the thing with Ridgewell sat between them like a live wire neither wanted to touch. They were scrupulously polite, professionally distant, and absolutely terrible at hiding what was actually happening from anyone who bothered to pay attention. "You're both idiots," Mrs. Chen announced one afternoon, finding Evelyn staring out the window in the direction of the main house. "Excuse me? You heard me. You and Dawson are dancing around each other like teenagers at a barn dance. It's painful to watch. There's nothing to dance around. We're employer and employee. Your contract ends in 2 months. Then you'll be neither employed nor employer. What's your excuse then?" Evelyn turned to face her. "My excuse is that I don't know if he actually wants anything beyond what he said at the party. He said he felt something, not that he wanted to do anything about it." "Men like Dawson don't say things like that lightly. He was testing the water, and I told him I felt it too. The ball's in his court." Mrs. Chen shook her head. "The ball is lost in the middle of the court while you both stand on opposite sides waiting for the other person to pick it up. Someone needs to take a risk. Maybe I'm tired of taking risks. Maybe I want some certainty for once. Then you're going to be waiting a long time. Certainty is a myth we tell ourselves to feel safe." The older woman's expression softened. "Love, and don't pretend that's not what this is, love requires someone to jump first, usually both people at the same time, in the dark, hoping the other person's jumping too." "That sounds terrifying." "It is, but it's also the only way forward." Christmas came and went quietly. Evelyn made a feast for the ranch hands and a special dinner for the main house, and tried not to think about how this might be her last Christmas at Thornridge. Lily gave her a drawing she'd made of the two of them cooking together, and Evelyn had to excuse herself to cry in private for a few minutes. Ridgewell gave her a leather-bound journal for recipe notes, and the personal nature of the gift wasn't lost on anyone. Inside the front cover, he'd written simply, "For all the recipes yet to come." She gave him a scarf she'd knitted in her spare time, which wasn't much but felt safer than anything more personal. He wore it every day after that, even when it wasn't particularly cold. The new year arrived with snow and wind that made outdoor work nearly impossible. The ranch hands spent more time in the bunkhouse, and Evelyn's kitchen became a gathering place where men played cards, mended equipment, and told stories to pass the long winter evenings. She was making bread one afternoon in mid-January when Holloway appeared with news that changed everything. "Miss Harper, there's been an incident. Mr. Ridgewell needs you at the main house." Her blood went cold. "What kind of incident? Is Lily all right?" "Lily's fine. It's Mrs. Chen. She fell on the ice coming back from the chicken coop. We think her ankle's broken." Evelyn was moving before he finished talking, pulling off her apron and running across the frozen yard to the main house. She found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, pale and clearly in pain, with her left ankle swelling to twice its normal size. "It's not as bad as it looks," Mrs. Chen said through gritted teeth. "It looks terrible." Evelyn knelt beside her, examining the ankle carefully. "We need to get the doctor out here. In this weather, he'll never make it. The roads are impassable." Ridgewell was pacing, clearly trying to stay calm. "I've sent Billy to try, but it could be tomorrow before anyone gets through." Evelyn looked at the ankle, at Mrs. Chen's pale face, and made a decision. "We need to set it and wrap it tight to keep the swelling down. Do you have medical supplies?" "Some. Bandages, laudanum for pain, splints." Ridgewell was already moving to fetch them. With Mrs. Chen's help and instruction, Evelyn managed to stabilize the ankle. It wasn't professional medical care, but it was better than nothing. The older woman took a dose of laudanum and was soon drifting in and out of consciousness. "She'll need constant care for at least a few days," Evelyn said quietly to Ridgewell, "and someone to handle all her duties in the main house." "I can manage most of it. Lily can help." "Lily's 8 years old, and you have ranch business to attend to?" Evelyn took a breath. "I'll move into the main house temporarily. I can handle cooking for both households from here, and it'll be easier to check on Mrs. Chen. Evelyn, that's going to look... I don't care how it looks. Mrs. Chen needs help, and I'm the logical person to provide it. She met his eyes directly. Unless you don't want me here. Of course I want... He stopped himself. Of course it makes sense for you to be here. Thank you. Moving into the main house was strange and intimate in ways Evelyn hadn't anticipated. Her small room was down the hall from Lily's and across from Mrs. Chen's, close enough to hear if the older woman needed anything during the night. It was bigger than her bunkhouse quarters and significantly more comfortable, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the valley. But the real change was in the daily rhythms. She now ate breakfast with Ridgewell and Lily, cooked in a kitchen that was better equipped than the bunkhouse setup, and moved through spaces that felt more like a home than a workplace. Lily was delighted to have her there all the time. The girl shadowed her constantly, helping with cooking and chattering about everything and nothing. In the evenings, they would sit together in the main room while Ridgewell worked on his accounts, and it felt dangerously like a family. Mrs. Chen recovered slowly. The doctor finally made it through 3 days after the fall and confirmed that Evelyn had done a good job setting the ankle, but that it would be weeks before the older woman could put weight on it properly. I'm sorry to be such a burden, Mrs. Chen said. You're not a burden. You're a friend who's injured. Evelyn adjusted the pillows behind her back. Besides, you've helped me more times than I can count. This is just returning the favor. Still, I know this puts you in an awkward position. Living in the main house, spending so much time with Dawson and Lily. People will talk. People are always talking. I've stopped listening. Have you? Mrs. Chen looked at her carefully. Or have you just gotten better at pretending? It was the same question Ridgewell had asked at the party. Evelyn still didn't have a good answer. The moment that changed everything came 2 weeks later, on a night when winter had its teeth fully sunk into the ranch, and the wind howled like something alive outside the windows. Evelyn had put Lily to bed and checked on Mrs. Chen, who was sleeping peacefully. She should have gone to her own room, but instead she found herself in the kitchen making tea, delaying the moment when she'd have to face the quiet and her own thoughts. Ridgewell appeared in the doorway, still dressed from his day's work, looking tired and wind-burned. Can't sleep? He asked. Haven't tried yet. You want tea? Please. They sat at the kitchen table together, warming their hands on the cups and not talking about anything important. It felt comfortable and domestic and absolutely terrifying in its normalcy. Your contract ends in 3 weeks, Ridgewell finally said. I know. Have you decided what you're doing after? Evelyn stared into her tea. Not yet. You could stay. I could offer you a permanent position, not just a contract. Better wages, your own cottage on the property if you wanted more privacy. You'd still cook for the hands, but it would be yours. No end date hanging over you. Is that what you want? For me to stay as the cook? The silence stretched out between them. When Ridgewell finally spoke, his voice was rough. No, that's not what I want. Evelyn's heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. Then what do you want? I want you to stay as more than the cook. I want to court you properly, if you'll let me. I want to see where this goes when we're not worried about contracts and gossip, and all the reasons it's complicated. He set down his teacup carefully. But I also want you to have a choice. A real choice. Not one forced by circumstances or duty. So if you want to leave, I'll understand. I'll give you a glowing reference and pay you a bonus and wish you well. But if you want to stay, I want to stay. The words came out before she could second-guess them. Not because I don't have other options, and not because I'm afraid of being alone, but because I've found something here that I didn't even know I was looking for. What's that? Home, purpose. People who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. She finally looked up at him. And you. I found you, and I don't want to lose that. Ridgewell reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was calloused from ranch work, warm and solid and real. You won't lose it, I promise you that. Don't make promises you can't keep. I don't. He smiled slightly. I'm stubborn that way. Good, because so am I. They sat there holding hands across the kitchen table while the wind howled outside and the house creaked around them. It wasn't a proposal, wasn't even really a declaration. Just two people who'd been through hell separately deciding to try the road forward together. The next morning, Evelyn woke up and made breakfast for the household like she did every morning. But when Ridgewell came down and found her in the kitchen, he kissed her forehead in greeting like it was the most natural thing in the world, and Lily clapped her hands in delight. "Does this mean Miss Evelyn's staying forever?" the girl asked. "If she wants to," Ridgewell said, looking at Evelyn. "I want to," Evelyn confirmed. Mrs. Chen, watching from her chair in the corner with her injured ankle propped up, smiled into her tea and said nothing. The last month of the original contract passed in a blur of planning and change. Ridgewell officially offered Evelyn a permanent position as head cook with wages that made her eyes water. But he also made it clear the job and the courtship were separate things. She could have one without the other if she wanted. She wanted both. The gossip started up again when word got out that Evelyn was staying and that she and Ridgewell were courting. But this time it felt different. She'd proven herself too thoroughly for the old accusations to stick. And frankly, she was too happy to care what people thought. Thomas came to visit in early March, bringing news that he'd been promoted to general manager at Patterson's boarding house and was seriously courting the owner's daughter. "Look at us," he said, sitting in the main house kitchen while Evelyn made dinner. "Both of us starting over, both of us making it work. We're not our parents' mistakes," Evelyn said. "We're just ourselves, doing the best we can." Ma would have liked that philosophy. Yeah, she would have. Spring came late but fierce, melting the snow and turning the ranch into a mess of mud and new growth. The cattle were brought down from winter pastures, and the work intensified as everyone prepared for the busy season ahead. Evelyn's kitchen became even more central to ranch life. She'd hired 2 assistants to help with the increased workload, and together they turned out meals that became legendary in the county. People started requesting the Thornridge Ranch kitchen for events and celebrations, and Evelyn found herself building a reputation that had nothing to do with scandal and everything to do with skill. In May, on a warm evening when the sunset turned the sky into fire, Ridgewell found Evelyn in the garden behind the main house. She'd started planting herbs and vegetables, creating something that was part practical and part beautiful. "I have something to ask you," he said. "All right. Lily wants to know if she can call you Ma. Not instead of remembering her mother, but because she thinks of you that way now." He paused. "I told her she needed to ask you herself, but I wanted to prepare you first." Evelyn felt tears prick at her eyes. "What do you think?" "I think Margaret would understand. I think she'd want Lily to have someone who loves her the way you do." He stepped closer. "And I think I want to make this official. Not just courting, not just staying. I want you to be my wife, if you'll have me." It wasn't a romantic proposal by traditional standards. No kneeling, no rehearsed speech, no ring. Just an honest man asking an honest question in a garden at sunset. "Yes," Evelyn said. "Yes, I'll have you." They were married in June in a small ceremony at the ranch with just the Hands and Mrs. Chen and Thomas and Lily. No town spectacle, no big celebration, just the people who mattered witnessing 2 people who'd found each other against all odds. Lily did start calling her Ma, and Evelyn's heart broke and healed a little more each time she heard it. The county newspaper ran a story about the wedding with the headline, "Competition Winner Wins Heart of Local Rancher," which was cheesy but not entirely inaccurate. The article mentioned Evelyn's rise from desperate cook to award winner to respected ranch wife, painting it as a feel-good story about perseverance and love. Sarah Mitchell got married 6 months later to a banker from Cooperville, and she and Evelyn developed a distant but polite relationship based on mutual respect and shared relief that they'd each found their own paths. 2 years after that first desperate day, when Evelyn had arrived at Thornridge Ranch with nothing but a canvas bag and her mother's recipe book, she stood in the main house kitchen teaching Lily, now 10 and showing real talent, how to make her grandmother's apple tart. "The secret," Evelyn said, watching the girl carefully peel apples, "is knowing when to stop. You can overwork a crust the same way you can overwork yourself. Sometimes good enough is actually perfect." "Papa says you never settle for good enough," Lily observed. "That's different. I'm talking about knowing the difference between excellence and perfection. Excellence you can achieve. Perfection is a myth that'll make you crazy chasing it." Through the window, she could see Ridgewell talking with Holloway about spring planting. Mrs. Chen was sitting on the porch with her ankle fully healed, shelling peas and probably judging everyone's technique. The ranch hands were scattered across the property, doing the endless work that kept an operation this size running. It was her life now. Not perfect, not without challenges, but hers in a way nothing had ever been before. "Ma." Lily's voice pulled her back to the present. Do you ever miss your old life before you came here? Evelyn thought about the desperate, defeated girl who'd climbed into Coop's wagon with nothing to lose and everything to fear. She thought about how hard she'd fought to prove herself, how much she'd risked, how many times she'd nearly given up. No, she said honestly. That life taught me what I needed to know to appreciate this one. But I don't miss it. Do you think I'll have to leave someday to find my own life? Maybe. Probably. And that'll be all right. Evelyn put her arm around the girl's shoulders. But wherever you go and whatever you do, you'll always have this place to come back to. That's what home means. Not a place you're trapped, but a place that's waiting when you need it. Lily leaned into her side. I'm glad you stayed. I'm glad you're my ma. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That evening, after the dinner dishes were done and Lily was in bed, Evelyn and Dawson sat on the porch watching the stars come out. The night was warm and the cattle were quiet, and everything felt settled in a way it never had before. Happy? Dawson asked, taking her hand. Yes. Are you? More than I thought possible. He kissed her hand. You know, I never thanked you properly for taking the job that day, for giving us a chance. You gave me a chance. I just took it. No, you did more than take it. You transformed it into something neither of us expected. He looked at her in the starlight. You transformed all of us, really. Made us better than we were. Evelyn thought about that, about how sometimes the things that look like endings are actually beginnings in disguise, how desperation can lead to discovery, and how the worst moments of life can set the stage for the best ones. She'd come to Thornridge Ranch broken and desperate, expecting to endure 6 months of hardship and leave with just enough money to survive. Instead, she'd found purpose, family, love, and herself. Not because everything had been easy or perfect, but because she'd chosen to stay when staying was hard, to fight when fighting seemed pointless, to risk her heart when every logical reason said to protect it. I think, Evelyn said quietly, we transformed each other. That's how it's supposed to work. Is that the secret? Mutual transformation? That and knowing how to make a really good apple tart? Dawson laughed, pulling her close. Good thing I married someone who knows both. They sat there together as the night deepened around them. Two people who'd found each other in the middle of nowhere and decided to build something lasting from the pieces they'd brought with them. Somewhere in the bunkhouse, someone was playing a harmonica. In the barn, a horse whinnied softly. The wind moved through the valley, carrying the smell of sage and possibility. And in the main house kitchen, tomorrow's bread dough was rising in the warm darkness, transforming itself into something new and necessary and good. Just like everything else at Thornridge Ranch, it would take time and patience and the right conditions. But it would rise. It always did. That was the thing about life, Evelyn had learned. If you gave it time and care and refused to give up when things got hard, it had a way of rising to meet you. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but beautifully nonetheless. And that, she thought as Dawson's arm tightened around her shoulders, was more than enough. It was everything.